Welcome to Open Tables. With your hosts, Cynthia Sue Larson.
But it's okay for everybody to change. It's okay to let things go. And that's really powerful.
Christopher Anatra.
The universe is based on commerce. You know me as the quantum businessman.
Jerry Hicks.
I feel like I've woken up in a parallel dimension where everybody's exactly the same. They look the same memories generally speaking, but they're different.
And Shane Robinson.
Nobody has all the answers, so everybody's welcome to share their ideas, and it really expands our consciousness when we do that.
Open Tables. Unique perspectives for a new view of reality.
Hello, folks. I am Jerry Hicks, also known as the Dark Wolf. Welcome to the first International Mandela Effect conference since the in-person conference last month. So this is our first digital conference since we've been back. Folks, we have a great show for you today. It's spooky how good this show is going to be, I'm telling you. Ladies and gentlemen, before we get started, though, we have to go through some of that boring legal stuff. So if we can go ahead and get the disclaimer there, the content you are about to watch is meant for thought and consideration. Please be respectful of each other and opinions shared. This is a safe space to express thoughts, ideas, and information. Please note that no copyright infringement is intended with regard to inclusion of short excerpts of material that are included in accordance with fair use under Section 107 of the Copyright Act. I'm getting really good at saying that quick. Can you tell? Ladies and gentlemen, it is now my honor and pleasure to bring on my incredible team. I could not do any of this. None of this would be possible without these next few folks. First up, we have Cynthia Sue Larson. That's right.
Hello.
Next, we have our buddy Shane Robinson, unbiased and on the fence, followed by, last but not least, Christopher Anatra. You know him as the quantum businessman. My good friends, my great teammates, ladies and gentlemen, this is the International Mandela Effect Conference. How we doing, guys?
Awesome.
Great. Very good.
That's what I like to hear. Ladies and gentlemen, we've got a heck of a show for you today. It's going to be a long show. Buckle in, strap it down, make sure you got your food and drink. We're going to be here a while, and you are not going to want to go nowhere, I promise. You're not even going to want to get up for a bathroom break once you see our guest. You are going to be riveted. I know I am. Speaking of riveted, let's see what's going to rivet them to their seats. Our producer, Heather, go ahead and throw that. There we go. Agenda up on the screen. It is our special guest, Rizwan Virk. Ladies and gentlemen, if you don't know who that is, you will in just a moment. This month's sponsors after that, followed by IMEC board member updates. IMEC 2023 Mandela Effects. Ladies and gentlemen, we had an incredible time. If you were able to join us in Connecticut last month, then you'll know what we're talking about. There were some really incredible moments once again at this conference, just like the first one. We're going to discuss those today, as well as the scientists changing the past. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, we might have an answer to the Mandela effect. Maybe, maybe not. Let's see what we got here. Scientists changing the past. That's interesting. Followed by our mailbag and a Q&A. Ladies and gentlemen, that's our show for today. I can't wait. But it is now my honor and pleasure to introduce Rizwan Virk. Rizwan is an entrepreneur, video game pioneer, film producer, venture capitalist, and computer scientist. I need to get that tongue to work. Computer scientist, there we go, who founded Play Labs at MIT and teaches at the College of Global Futures and the Fulton Schools of Engineering at Arizona State University. Virk is author of The Simulation Hypothesis, also Startup Myths and Models, Treasure Hunt, and Zen Entrepreneurship. I'm assuming those are all different books. I hope that's not all like a one name.
No.
It is all different books, yeah. Virk is a venture partner at Griffin Gaming Partners and has invested in startups including Discord, Theta Labs, Upland, and Tapjoy. Ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor and a pleasure to bring to the stage right now Rizwan Virk.
Hello, everyone. Great to be with you today.
Thank you. Such a pleasure.
It's great to have you here, my friend. You have had your hand in a lot of stuff that we've heard of. I have myself used Discord a number of times, for instance, and I'm pretty sure a lot of our listening audience has. So that's really cool. So you're a programmer from MIT, correct?
Yeah. So my background was in computer science and started off, as writing programs and building software companies, and then eventually ended up becoming an investor in a lot of different companies and running a startup program at MIT about video game related technology. And not many people know this, but Discord was originally a video game company. Like they actually came out with an actual video game for the iPad. It was like a MOBA or like a League of Legends type of game, and that game didn't do that well. And I knew the founder from when I had myself and my co-founder had the #1 game in the App Store. This was a long time ago now, back when the App Store was small. It was about a decade ago, and we ended up selling our company to a big Japanese company. But so I knew him from those days, and he was starting this new company, and so I had invested in it. And one day he said, the games didn't do as well as we thought, but we made this chat thing, and we did it because we hated using Skype to talk to each other while we're playing video games. And so we just built it into our game, and now we released it as a separate app. And the next thing you know, it was getting like 100,000 downloads a week, right? Which was pretty amazing. And of course, today, it's pretty widely known.
Today, it's actually used for gamers to talk to each other while gaming. So it's
still
funny
the
how it's
standard
come full
program,
circle.
yeah. It's still the standard program.
Yeah, and then like on campus now, a lot of the students, they use Discord for all kinds of things. Even more, I guess, older guys like to use WhatsApp or other messengers. But
and you were directly involved with that, right?
Yeah, well, I was an investor, angel investor. They call
investor,
it, right?
okay, gotcha.
In the very early days, yeah, I didn't start it, but
so you weren't programming in that. Cool.
No, I wasn't programming that. Yeah.
You're into the Mandela Effect, right? You've heard of this phenomenon at least once, right? Being on this show, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, so I want to test your Mandela Effect prowess. Would you mind playing a little game with us, sir?
Sure, absolutely. I've never had my Mandela Effect prowess tested before.
All right, well, if I could get producer Heather to go ahead and throw up. There we go. So we had this pre-made ready and waiting for you, sir. There's a kid's book that most of us remember growing up with. One of the most famous Mandela effects ever. Do you remember what book this is by name first?
Yeah, so that was the Bernstein Bears, right? And so, one of the things I did in my book, The Simulated Multiverse, is categorize these different Mandela effects, right? And so that was one of the spelling related ones that, you could kind of categorize a bunch of Mandela effects in that category,
There we go. So we started off with an easy one there. I can't wait to hear your category there, but so we got an easy one. So there's a children's movie we all grew up watching. It has a really wicked witch in it, evil step mother, I believe it was, and she says something on the wall. What was the something, sir?
Well, the thing we all thought it was mirror on the wall, right?
Yes.
But supposedly in the Mandela Effect, it's magic mirror on the wall, right? If you go back and watch,
which is disturbing. I don't remember that. All right, so he's got another one. He's pretty good, guys. I got to say, he's done his homework. So let's get a little deeper on the level of Mandela effects. Can you describe the location of the human heart, sir?
Yeah, that's an interesting one, right? I mean, there's, I guess, disagreement about whether it's in the center or slightly to the left. I mean, there's not disagreement. There's disagreement in terms of the Mandela effect, in terms of, where it is. I mean, I was a recipient of heart surgery. You can kind of still see the the mark here.
Right.
And so, I know they cut it right down the middle here, right? But we pay attention to chest pain on the left side. So it's a good question. I just know that there's some, Mandela effect related to that. Yeah.
Absolutely, yes. So I remember putting my hand over my heart on one side of my chest for the flag, right? We were told it covers our heart.
And was it always the left side?
Yeah, the left side. Yeah.
Yeah, right? But today people are saying it's sort of here, right?
Right. It's supposed to be dead center. And that makes no sense to me. We were lied to and all the textbooks were wrong, or, we live in a different reality, because I can't find those old textbooks that told me different.
Yeah. And so that fits into that category of kind of location-based Mandela effects. Like there's a few geographical ones like that, like the location of Australia.
So spatial location based.
Spatial, although this one's more in the body, I guess. But yeah.
Very personal.
Right, which I would still qualify as spatial location. Everything has a spatial location, technically.
Yeah, it even shows us how our avatar can change, right?
That's right.
So, geography, art, pop culture, all these different types of Mandela effects, but actually who we are, avatar can get changed and get upgraded because it's better that it's in the center of the chest. You can take your blood pressure now on either arm, your left arm or your right arm. It doesn't matter.
And it's aligned with your chakra.
It used to always be the left arm, but now
always left arm.
either. Yeah.
It's interesting. Well, if you look at video game history, or like I used to spend a lot of time in Second Life, which was a virtual world where people live their virtual lives, and they started off with these kind of very basic avatars, and then over time the avatars got better, and now they have like these very realistic skins with all kinds of hair, styles and stuff, and they're like way better mesh based versus older ones, and you can just see how the same character gets upgraded, and you log in the game and you would know that this character started off looking a certain way. So that's an interesting point there about avatars and upgrading avatars.
We might want to check on the flip-flop as far as the heart goes. Iron Fire Horse in chat, if I may, says, I went with my mom the other day for a heart ultrasound. She positioned in a position so they could access the heart on the left side, the text said. So I don't know anymore.
Oh, interesting.
Well, that's what they do with ultrasounds. I mean, they do kind of pay more attention to the left side. So I don't know if it's exactly in the center or it's slightly off center, but it's not like way off center. But when they measure like your heart, like you do what's called a stress test, where you're on a treadmill, and then afterwards they try to see where does the blood flow. I mean, and they have you lie on your right side. And so there is still this element of the left side, and that's where the chest pain for heart attacks typically comes into play. So there definitely is still more of that. I just don't know what the anatomy books say exactly right now.
The anatomy books are worrying, at least the last time I looked at them.
Well, we're noticing with the Mandela effect, sometimes there can be a little flip-flopping, or there are things you can keep an eye on, like the Mona Lisa smile and the thinker with the, or does the fist go? Some of these seem like they're moving a little bit.
The thinker one is quite interesting. And I got to say, for me, that was one that was really quite surprising. And, I'm here in Silicon Valley, so I went literally to the Stanford Art Museum, where they have one of the bronze casts of the thinker, right? To take a picture of, where he has it, right? And there's actually three. There's the unclenched fist, the clenched fist, and then the fist on top here.
Yeah, that one has changed a number of times. As far as open and closed fist, chewing the knuckles or not chewing the knuckles, up to the head or down to the mouth. Yeah. And Shane, I know, has tracked that one since pretty much the beginning. One of them we've tracked a long time also is the location of the kidneys. So where are the kidneys at in the body?
Okay. So that's one Mandela effect I haven't heard of, actually.
Where
I
do
assume they're kind of in the back.
I
remember them being in the back on either side, right?
Okay, a little bit more specific, back either side.
Like lower back.
Right? Thank you. That's
like
what I'm
below the rib cage or above the rib cage. Like
I kind of remember them being sort of close to the bottom of the rib cage, right?
What if I told you they were actually inside the rib cage?
Oh, that's interesting.
Because the whole kidney punch thing, right?
Right. Well, I always think about the proximity and significance of a Mandela effect, right? Like, I think the more, if you're a doctor and you remember the location of the kidneys being lower, like you're closer to it, or if you've been kidney punched or something, right? And so, like, for me, that's one I haven't thought about very much. So I can't say that. I mean, I remember them being down there, but it wasn't one that I was close to or has a lot of significance for me,
I wanted to mention too, I was just on a trip to Mexico, and one of the people on the trip is a biology teacher. And I told him about the new location of the kidneys, and he was freaking out because he's like, I taught this in biology class. They're in your lower back. They're not up next to your lungs. This is like, people that know that. And then you wonder, how do doctors like just automatically know how to do a kidney transplant? And then when you tune into that, believe it or not, most doctors are actually NPCs. which leads into another topic. Right? I'll leave it there for now, but it's fascinating.
But that's interesting with the biologist. It's sort of like if you're Jewish and you remember the Bernstein Bears being one way, it's probably more significant to you than somebody who just kind of heard about it, right? And if you asked your parents and you asked them why are the Bears Jewish, and if the parents said, well, yes or no or whatever they said, right? It's more like, I consider those more significant evidence for the Mandela effect. Or like, Mandela dying in prison. It's one thing for us all to remember if we weren't really paying attention that closely back in the 80s and 90s. But there was a YouTuber, somebody on this show probably knows who it is. I'm forgetting her name at the moment, but she was a journalism student and she was going to go to South Africa to actually meet him in prison, right? Maybe Cynthia,
Eileen, yes.
Eileen, yeah. And who became a journalist and worked for NPR afterwards.
Right,
died.
Yes.
And so it's like, well, I'll trust that as a better example, or not example, but as better evidence because you're closer to. Like, I would have no idea that the Reverend Billy Graham died, but somebody who's like, evangelical Christian, who's the parents received that. The magazine that said Billy Graham died, to them that's more significant and closer. So I would be more likely to trust their word on that.
When someone has an anchor memory on something, right?
Yeah, that's maybe a good way to put it as well.
Yeah, like the Bible Mandela effects.
Right.
Yeah.
Or the Quran. I looked into that, but we can talk about that later. I mentioned it in my book.
Wait, now this is going to get interesting quick.
Well, before we move on to the next question, one of the things we noticed early on, because what you would tend to do if you notice the geographical change would be to go to someone who's like a pilot or a sea captain or something, or if it's an anatomy change, you go to a doctor or a nurse or something like that. But what you would find is more than likely they would always remember it in the way it's been if they hadn't really left it, right? So like if they were a doctor that retired, they would seem to remember how things were. But if they were still actively a doctor, and I think you kind of referred to it being tied in with
the quantum zero effect.
Exactly, right?
Yeah, that's what I discuss it as. But there are other ways to look at it, like, and we'll be getting into some of today, some of the theories that from this excellent book, The Simulated Multiverse, because we've got Riz here, so we're going to be covering his ideas. And maybe we should go through the rest of these and dive into some of the ideas.
Right, yeah, so let's go ahead and now that we've got those two kind of harder ones as far as the scriptatory out of the way, so let's kind of rush through these last three here. Describe briefly the Fruit of the Loom logo, please, Mr. Riz, as you remember it.
Right, as I remember it, is it's the fruit with some kind of basket, right? Sort of the cornucopia, if you will. That's sort of how I remember it. Yeah.
Excellent. And of course, we know today, unfortunately, what's wrong with it, Riz?
Yeah, I guess the basket or the thing is missing, right? Yeah. Is it just the fruit? Yeah.
Absolutely, sir. Yeah. Absolutely. I'm really impressed. This guy knows his stuff. Statue of Liberty is located at
Ellis Island. So that one I remember. I didn't actually know there was a Mandela effect on this one. So what's the Mandela effect?
Cynthia, where's the Statue of Liberty located at?
I don't know. It's totally
in New Jersey. It's Liberty Island in New Jersey.
In Jersey.
It's Liberty Island.
I can't even say it because it sounds so wrong.
Right. In New Jersey.
Like this, I can't even bring myself to say that.
Not New York Harbor.
I don't like the next one.
New Jersey.
These last two really bother me.
Literally over the Jersey line. That is not even a question. It's not hanging on the line. It's not even a question. It's inside Jersey.
So this is another geographical one, right?
Yeah.
So the actual location of the island. It's not the name of the island, right? It's
both. It's not Ellis. No, sir. Liberty Island.
Well, but here's I'm just searching on Amazon. I see private statue. On Google of Liberty and Ellis Island tour. That's interesting. Maybe they renamed it. Or
Ellis Island. You'll go to a tour there where I guess all the immigrants came in, right? But the statue isn't there anymore.
I see.
But the buildings are still there, right?
It's over. Yeah.
Only part of it moved, I'm assuming.
That makes sense. Yeah.
And if you look at it from the down view, it's on what's called a star fort. It was never on a star fort before, but it's a star fort called Fort Hood, which also has a significance. But yeah, so lots of changes in the reality related to that.
Yeah, interesting.
And last but not least, there's a great big train station in New York that's been the butt of every joke since I've been alive, especially when you're really busy. It's as busy as...
What do you mean, Penn Station? Grand Central? I don't know. It's
There we go. There we go.
Yeah.
Say it again.
Grand Central Station? Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That's a big train station, isn't it?
Yeah, as far as I remember.
Or is it a big subway station?
There's the one under Madison Square Gardens, which I've been to, but I
You
think that's
see, Grand Central Station,
Yeah.
as we remember it, is actually called Grand Central Terminal.
Ah, interesting.
Etched in rock that way.
Now, station does exist. They didn't completely make it disappear. It's the subway underneath.
I see. So it's a buried Mandela effect.
Yeah, it basically geographically, spatially changed.
Yeah.
It's not the one on top that we all remember with the big clock and the gold fancy walls and all that neat writing. And yeah, it actually doesn't say Grand Central Station anymore. It says Grand Central Terminal, and always has.
Yeah, since the 1920s, it's always been Grand Central Terminal.
Yep.
That's
It's
interesting.
busy in here as Grand Central Terminal. It just doesn't roll off the tongue right.
Well, it's so good to hear you mentioning a lot of the things we remember too. And maybe we go to the next slide, because this brings up something you talk about. Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say I really appreciate you hanging out and doing that little game with us. You, I gotta say, have a very strong prowess of the Mandela effect. Only two of them you hadn't really had experience with, but most of them you were very spot on. So well done, Riz. You did a great job there, sir. Your prowess has now been tested for the first time.
and I learned at least one or two new ones. So that's great. Yeah.
If we don't learn something new every day, sir, our day is wasted. And I have learned that you've got a great chapter in this book here, The Simulated Multiverse, chapter on the Mandela Effect, real or mass delusion. I kind of have an idea where you might fall on this. But what is it, real or mass delusion, sir?
Well, I mean, this is where I like to tell the story that we were talking about earlier, but I don't think this audience has heard. Is I started off by thinking, well, it's probably just faulty memory, so closer to the mass delusion. And I had written my book, The Simulation Hypothesis, about the idea that we live inside a video game or a computer simulation. And one of my friends from MIT, who was also a computer scientist and he worked for Google, was visiting Google's corporate offices, which are just down the road from where I was living in Silicon Valley, where I am right now. And he said, well, the simulation hypothesis is one of the explanations for the Mandela effect, so you should really look into it. And, I wasn't originally inclined to do it, but I started to think about it. And this idea just wouldn't leave my head that, if you can run one simulation, you can run multiple simulations, and that you would actually change the variables and you would rerun the simulation again. And you would have these points in the simulation where you could go back and you could rerun it again, just in the same way you could save the game state. And so, looking at it purely from a computational perspective, I started to dive deep into it. And came to the conclusion, especially after looking at the quantum physics side of it, that it's very possible that it's real, that it's not just a mass delusion, and that certain people do remember an actual run of the simulation. And if you go back and you rerun the same thing, there's something in chaos theory. There's this idea of changing initial conditions, right? So complexity theory is based on this idea that if you change your initial conditions and then you run through the same process, and they demonstrate this with like cellular automata and different ideas, but the idea is the butterfly effect. The concept to really illustrate this is a butterfly flaps its wings. It's a small change, right? But then the stock market crashes. The butterfly flaps its wings in Hong Kong, and the stock market crashes in New York or in London. And how does that happen? That small changes can cause big effects down the road. And what I think is interesting about the Mandela effect is sometimes you change, it's almost as if there's a bunch of little changes and they cascade. And so, if you think of all the different Mandela effects we talked about, it's not just that, say, I might remember all of them one way, right? Different people might remember each one. So there's let's say two or three possibilities per Mandela effect. And if you just did a simple calculation, you get this grid of possibilities, right? Like some people remember Mandela Like I remember Mandela becoming president of South Africa and not dying in prison, right? But I also remember, Luke, I am your father, right? So if you took every combination of all these Mandela effects, what you get is like this large grid, which I call the multiverse grid, right? It's kind of like what in the superhero movies now, the multiverse has become such a popular idea. I like to say it's past the 10-year-old test, right? Which is, when a scientific idea gets to the point where even a 10-year-old can explain it. And this happened with superheroes, back in the 1930s. Most people understood there might be other planets around other stars, even though we hadn't discovered them. That idea was not so weird. And so even a 10-year-old could understand that Superman came from another planet called Krypton, right? It wasn't that weird. But if you tried to do that in
Right.
1830, people would be like, what are you talking about? We didn't even know about the planets in our solar system, let alone planets in other solar systems.
And now there are so many people often think multiverse is just one thing. But Heather, can you go to the next slide? Because in your book, Riz, you've got pictures of at least three. You talk about, all these different kinds of multiverses. So for people who've never heard of this, maybe you could run us through these three.
Yeah, so there's a lot of different types of multiverses. And so the type of multiverse that I was just talking about, where you have different possibilities and which the superhero movies are based on, is actually the quantum multiverse. And I was just going to say that my nephews were spent like 20 minutes explaining to me the multiverse by talking about the TV show The Flash, right? And this was like 5-6 years ago, where you have different timelines, and you have Flash from Earth 2, and then you have the Flash from another Earth who's like a different character with a different name, or a different actor and the same name. And I remember thinking back then, okay, the multiverse idea has passed the 10-year-old test, and literally my eldest nephew is 10 years old, and so they were explaining it to me, and so I thought that was interesting that now it's pervasive in at least popular culture, like with Loki and stuff. So these different multiverses there's like 9 different flavors of the multiverse, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the one in the middle is interesting because it's what some people call the doppelganger multiverse, or it's more of a spatially based multiverse. And the idea is that if the universe is infinite and it's expanding, right, there's only so far that we can observe. So there's an observable universe. That's the circle in the middle, right? But if you go outside that, we can't observe it. But there's another area, because the infinity is so big, that there will be another area of comparable size. And how many of those areas of comparable size will there be? An infinite number, because it's infinite, right? So this is where the law of big numbers gets really strange. And so physicists have posited that every single configuration of atoms or molecules that we have in this universe, in this Earth, that's a certain way, will exist somewhere in that infinite set of observable universes. So basically, that's like it's a weird multiverse.
So in other words, there could be another Riz and all of us having the same conversation, doing the same thing, way out on the other side of space or the universe itself.
Right, because it never ends. So if it's infinite, there's an infinite, number of possibilities, and so everything will repeat at least once, right? If not more than once. Because infinity is such a big number. Now, I find this kind of a weird multiverse. I don't know that I totally accept it, but this is one many physicists talk about.
This
right?
is trying to put the multiverse on a single timeline, which is a really strange idea to me. I'm a person that really is a single timeline belief type guy. I'm not big on the multiverse concept as far as us jumping through it, and I've publicly stated that. So it's the only reason I brought that. Not to say that it's wrong. Yeah. It's just my opinion, right? And that. I went to a talk at IMEC about all the theories, and this was one of the big parts that I delved into myself, was this idea of the different versions or flavors of the multiverse. So, I see that one as they're trying to keep everything on one level and just say you could just keep repeating over and over and over, opposed to we're literally moving to a new dimensional area.
Right, exactly. So that's kind of based in this 3D reality, but extending infinitely on all sides. And so when we talk about different timelines, yes, it's all one absolute timeline, but somewhere there'll be a multiverse that did things differently, right? There'll be an observable universe whose atoms are arranged slightly differently. So that's the idea of that particular type of multiverse, right? The one on the left is an interesting one because it's based on the idea of like cosmic inflation, as well as expansion, right? We say the universe is expanding today, scientists say, but there's this particular theory called inflation, which is not the same as the expansion that's happening now. In a sense, even though it's happening very fast, it's also relatively slow. The universe is, what they're saying is that the universe started off really, really small, with small, like really small, like quantum level small. And based on those fluctuations, within a second, the universe expanded to its current size. And so you end up getting what's like the Swiss cheese is used as an example to say you have these bubbles within this. Every time this has happened, you've created a new bubble. And we happen to just be in one of those bubbles, right? We can't reach the other holes in the Swiss cheese. Like, it's not possible because the laws of the universe may be completely different. They're all physical universes. So this is another weird one, but they result from different quantum fluctuations, and they may have completely different gravitational constants and other things. There may be no planets in those, like all kinds of things might be different in those. And so that's an inflationary multiverse. That's another one that physicists have come up with. And then on the right is the one of using a black hole and a white hole, where you can use the black hole, the gravity of the black hole, to, they're like wormholes that come out the other side into different parallel universes, right? So that's more of a like physics, gravitational, relativity based idea of multiverses. But again, these are the three of the different flavors that are out there. But those are, the one that's used the most, I think, in popular culture today, and the one perhaps that relates to the Mandela effect the most, I think, is the idea of the quantum multiverse, where every single choice basically branches off into a new universe. So you have like this, what I call the multiverse graph.
Next slide, Heather. Thank you. Yeah, I don't exactly have a picture of that, but here's something interesting from your book again. These are I took photographs from the book, simulated multiverse, and so this one just shows some implications of this quantum parallelism. And that, as you point out, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, sure. So I was going to say, I mean, most people here probably have heard of the observer effect, right? And
yes.
The observer effect and the idea that there's two possible realities, and the Schrodinger's cat is a thought experiment put out by Erwin Schrödinger, that if the cat has a 50% chance of being alive and a 50% chance of being dead because of some poison that could be released after an hour, which is it, right? And so the observer effect comes from the Copenhagen interpretation, which says that basically when we observe it, the probability wave collapses down to one of those possibilities, right? And common sense tells us the cat is either alive or dead. It can't be both. But quantum mechanics tells us the cat is both alive and dead until the moment of observation. Now, some scientists don't like that because that requires observation, consciousness. It requires a bunch of weird stuff, right? That doesn't make sense in traditional physics. So that's where the quantum multiverse idea came out as an alternative that says the universe splits into two, one where the cat is alive and one where the cat is dead. And so what I'm showing in this diagram is basically a quantum informational version of that, right? So if we think of the world as a series of bits, there's a famous saying from one of the top physicists of the 20th century named John Wheeler, who was one of the kind of the last giants of 20th century physics. He worked with Einstein, and he had his office down the hall, and Bohr and others, and he came up with this phrase, "it from bit." The basic idea, he said, that anything that is a physical object, like this bottle of water, or is actually consistent. If you keep going down and down further, looking for this thing called matter, you can't find it. There's molecules, but there's only a piece of those that are atoms. And you go in the atoms, and it's 99% empty space. And you go to the where are the electrons? Well, they're not really there. They're a point cloud. And then you go to look for the product of protons and neutrons. And he said, if you keep going down like Russian dolls all the way to the bottom level, the only thing that distinguishes a particle from another particle, like at the subatomic level, are its properties, which is basically answers to a series of yes/no questions. Right. And so that's a bit. A bit is an answer to a yes/no question, 1 or 0. So he said basically anything that's physical at the bottom level just consists of information. And so this diagram has tried to show this idea for the whole universe consists of bits. And I'm simplifying because you have only 4 bits, A. And if you flip those bits, each of the individual bits, you can get to different possibilities, right? And so by changing just one little bit, you get to almost a different universe, if you will. And so in this diagram, I'm describing quantum computing, which somehow explores all of the different possibilities and gets you to the answer that you're looking for. And nobody knows exactly how it works, but people say it's quantum parallelism that does this. The quantum computer actually is exploring in different versions of the universe each of those answers of different bits and trying to tell us. And then eventually we try to figure out a way to get the right answer, which is the universe we end up in. So it seems like the quantum computer figured out instantly, when in fact, if you try to do all of the possibilities, now it's not that hard with 4 bits. There's only 2 to the 4th possibilities, right? But yeah.
I want to highlight something here, because before we zoom past, but John Archibald Wheeler, the physicist you were talking about, in addition to it from bit, he also the key idea about the questions that you ask a question, nature answers. This is his other. He had so many big ideas, but this was the participatory universe concept. And I think I'm so glad you highlight that in the book and really put the spotlight on that, because it does seem, for those of us noticing reality shifts, the Mandela effect, that this could be, I mean, obviously it's playing a big role, and who the conscious observer is. And I think that's, maybe you could talk about the conscious observer and all this, how you feel that plays a role for what you're observing, what you're noticing.
Yeah, absolutely. So that was the thing that the physicists were uncomfortable about the Copenhagen interpretation, because it requires an observer, right? And some people say, well, maybe it just requires a measuring device. But then eventually somebody has to read that measurement, right?
Who observes the observer that observes the observer?
Eventually you get to it. And then he has another cool idea, which ties the Mandela effect. We can talk about it in a minute, which is the delayed choice, cosmic delayed choice experiment in the past and multiple possible paths. But before we get to that, I think for me, the conscious observer is closer to the idea of a player in a video game, right? Because what happens is there are possibilities, but then those possibilities get rendered on the screen for the player, right? So this whole thing becomes a weird kind of participation between the player and what's being rendered. I like to call the physical world a rendered world. I mean, the reality is, look, I'm not really talking to you guys right now. Right? I'm talking to my computer, which is rendering bits of information, right? And my voice is being translated into bits and being rendered on your. So for all I know, for all you know, I don't really have, right, this beautiful painting of pyramids, you know, on a planet in Sirius behind me, right? That could all be virtual, right? And in a video game, that's exactly how it works. Now I'm saying, let's extend that idea to the physical universe. Like, you can render, you know, if you're level 30, you render the field that you and your other avatar are in on your computer, and the other person renders it on their computer, right? And so you could see different things and not realize that you're seeing different things, because one person says, the ghost is clearly there, and the other person says, there's no ghost here. And this happens with UFOs. According to Jacques Vallée, who I interviewed, you know, for my book, you know, he was saying there have been many instances where you can see, one person can see the UFO and the person standing next to them can't. It's almost like a holographic projection, but it's rendered on their rendering device. And what is their rendering device, right? Maybe it's outside. It's like a mobile phone for Fortnite or a computer for World of Warcraft. So anyway, that's kind of where I come out. And if in the 80s, if you said, we'd like to render this entire 3D world of Fortnite or a World of Warcraft, we can't do it. There's too many bits, right? And so there's too many pixels. We can't keep track of them all. And so the only way we can do it today is one, we have better processors, but even so, we still can't render all the pixels. So we only render that which you can see on the computer with your avatar. So the rule of thumb is render only that which is observed, which is the same as the observer effect.
So let me ask you then, you spoke a little bit ago about the different branches of a main line and then coming back together into the main line. So my question would be, based on what we've discussed so far, if it is the idea of a multiverse that quantumly breaks down into this many variations, you get this many choices of multiverses of branches, if you will, simulations. And if the majority of the simulations have ran to the point that they're all Berenstain, and you've got a smaller version over here that's Berenstein, would the majority of simulations run, on either side? Would the majority win when it come back together? In other words, if we're on main branch and all of a sudden there's been a buildup of a different number of Jiffy peanut butter, there was enough buildup of
Right.
Jif peanut butters that it overweighed Jiffy, and we now have Jif on our main line. Could that be a conceptual possibility?
It could be a conceptual possibility, and this is where we're getting very speculative, and that's what I try to do in the book, to get speculative about this idea. I think most people would agree that there are multiple possible futures, right? Because if you go, you go to live in Connecticut versus Berkeley, right? And you make that choice, maybe you end up on a different timeline. The question is, does that other timeline still exist? Right? I think that's where the controversial thing comes in. And then what I'm saying is sometimes the timelines merge together, because when you run a computer simulation, you run a bunch of simulations and then you stop at some point. You cut off the tree, right? So one of the objections to the multiverse idea is that there's just too many of them, right? It's just infinite. Physicists love infinity at big numbers, but computer science is all about optimization, right? And so physicists do like to do brute force, infinite this, infinite that. Computer science, everything that's been optimized. The reason you can see me on your screen today, which you couldn't 20 years ago, is we've compressed the number of bits that need to be sent over the wire. So everything comes, and the way you optimize is you prune the tree and you say, these are promising timelines. And at some point you stop the various timelines and then you rerun them.
Heather, next slide, please. There's the last slide. So one more photo from your book, Riz. This is just such a great book. People should get it. So this is what relates to what you're talking about. We have multiple probable futures, sending back information that we use to make decisions.
Right. And so, there are some physicists who believe that the answer is that so this is a dilemma, right? I talked about the Copenhagen interpretation, which is the collapse of the probability wave. The multiverse is another way to resolve this quantum indeterminacy problem. And there are some who are saying that, well, the future is sending back information to the past, and that depending on which one you notice, right, that's the particular branch of the multiverse you go down. And so, my question as a computer scientist is, how can the future send you back information if it hasn't happened yet? So it has to have happened, right? Which means someone already ran the simulation forward and said, so why do we run simulations? We run them, one, to see what is the most likely outcome, like the weather, right? Like you're getting back to your majority rule, there's a bunch of simulations, this is what's probably going to happen, or what is the most optimal outcome, right? And so you run things forward to say, okay, if I do this, this may end up being better than that. And this is where, Philip K. Dick comes into our picture, right?
Yes.
And I interviewed his wife, Tessa. We were talking about this earlier in the private session. And she said that he literally came to believe that there were multiple timelines. And he made the famous statement in Metz, France, that we are living in a computer program reality. And the only clue we have to it is when some variable is changed. Some alteration occurs in our reality. We would have the overwhelming sense of deja vu, right? As if we had already heard the same words. We were speaking the same words. And it was kind of the basis for not just the man in the high castle. He came to believe that Germany and Japan won the war. They split America between them. And he remembered that. And but
I'm
also
impressed
there
with
were
your
other
extended quote. I have to point this out. That was a very extended quote, word for word. I am very impressed.
It's a fascinating speech. And so after my friend Bruce said, look at the Mandela effect, I just couldn't get out of my mind that Tessa was telling me that Philip K. Dick really believed these different timelines. And so I went back and really studied that speech, and there's a whole lot more. But what that speech was really about wasn't just that we were in a computer program reality. It said, if you think of these realities as suits, right? It's like the programmers are like trying on different suits. It's like they're trying on different futures, and they're altering the variables. Like she also told me that he believed that the simulators who he had come in contact with actually prevented the assassination of JFK in Dallas. But then he got assassinated in Orlando, or he got assassinated somewhere else, or it led to a very undesirable result. So they went back, they rewound to the point, and let that particular timeline, just like with the Germany and Japan timeline, like that timeline happened up to a point, and then they came back, and then they ran this timeline,
So
and for whatever
something
reason,
like a time locked event occurs. No matter how you change the variable, it's locked into where it has to occur.
right, or that it's a less optimal outcome. Even if you try to change certain variables, you still don't get what you want. And the only way to do that, so there's a process in computer science called computational irreducibility, which was coined by a guy named Stephen Wolfram, who's a pretty famous physicist who turned into a computer science guy, wrote the Mathematica software. If there's any engineers in the audience, or they would know that software. But anyway, he said if in a computationally certain processes, you kind of know what's going to happen after a while. They become stable, or they become repetitive, meaning at some point it's just going to go toggle between these two. But certain processes are complex or chaotic, and the only way to know what's going to happen at step 2 million is to run the program to step 1,999,999,999, and then run it again. And then the only way to know what happens at step 999 is to run it to step 998. And the only way to know what's going to happen there is to go. And so you basically have to run the program in order to figure out what's going to happen. It's like the 3-body problem is one of the famous examples of this. Like, what are these unsolved problems? There's also a science fiction novel by that name. But if you have 3 bodies, what's going to happen is one of them going to get into a stable orbit, or one of them going to shoot off. It's like you can't just calculate it. You have to run the simulation to figure it out. I mean, if we are inside a simulation, the way the future A, future B, and future C that you can tell which one is better is you've already run it. You just don't, you're just getting a little bit of information from that. Or maybe we are still on one of these testing timelines where America and the Allies won World War II. Perhaps that will be unwound one day too, right? And we're just going to send back information to the past. So we are the future in that case, but it's a possible future, not a actual future.
Ladies and gentlemen, I must stop right here. Consciousness Watch, $50 donation. Says super discussion. Thanks so much for having Rizwan on Open Tables. It's both our pleasure and honor to have him here. I can tell you that now. My mind's been blasted a number of times. It's been pointed out in the chat. My mouth was wide open. It's hanging open a number of times. I've got myself going, no way. So,
yeah, thank you so much,
thank
Paul.
you so much, Consciousness Watch. That is absolutely excellent. We sincerely appreciate that.
Big thanks to you too, Riz, for joining us today. You're making this pure gold for us. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
How much time do we have left with you, Mr. Riz?
I think we have a few more minutes because I have to stop at noon.
And Chris, do you want to ask one of your questions? Chris has a bunch of great questions. Pick one, please.
I have 7 questions, so I'm going to be really selective.
I don't think we'll get through all 7. But
No. I'll ask maybe 1 or 2. But I had heard you mention something called digital physics in one of your interviews, and I wanted to know if you could expand on that. Digital physics versus quantum physics versus how you define that concept.
Yeah, so this is an emerging concept within physics today. And if you think of how we have learned physics and taught physics, it's been based on equations, and it's been based on this idea of continuous motion, like equations are continuous. But what happened with quantum literally means, as I'm sure you guys all know, right? It means a discrete quantity of something, right? And it came about from Max Planck and electrons and energy and photons, a quanta of light, Einstein called it. Which actually we call photon, which said light is not a wave. It's these discrete quantities. But so digital physics is the idea that you can represent the world, the physical universe, as a computation, as opposed to being, using these mathematical equations. And more than that, it's the idea that you can represent that computation based on information, right? And so the idea, I think the term might have been coined by a guy who ran one of the early MIT computer science labs named Ed Fredkin. And he actually just died recently. There was a nice obituary about him in the New York Times. And he was one of the first people to work with cellular automata, like, the game of life, if you guys have seen it, where you have these cells. But he was one of the first to believe that the physical universe could be a computer, right? And then people like Stephen Wolfram, who I mentioned earlier, have picked up that idea now. and they've got, but if you talk physics today, people also talk about information conservation, right? Before it was always about a physical universe and the conservation of matter and energy. But now they also talk about the destruction or conservation of information and how much information is stored, for example, in a black hole, right? It's based on the surface area. That's where like the holographic principle comes into play. But you see all people talking about in physics. So I like to say that information science is eating the other sciences, right? So if you think of biology and genetics, you know, who was the guy to one of the first guys to posit something like a gene was von Neumann, who was a mathematician and computer scientist, right? And you know, what is DNA but a compact way to store, you know, a whole bunch of information? And so like I remember, you know, some of my friends from MIT went on to do like computational biology and like, oh, what's that? And they're just sitting there running computer programs, right? They're not in labs with biology. They're just like, you know, running information through computer programs. And so that's where, you know, digital physics is this idea. There's a neat paper somebody put out recently about the second law of infodynamics, which just came out. You guys may have seen this in the press where it talks about, is the world a simulation? Because he was saying that just like the second law of thermodynamics, which states that there's more entropy over time. He says with information, he's looking at biological, like you know, the COVID virus or whatever, different viruses and different genetics, that he actually finds that there's less entropy, which means that there's more information coherency, which means you can compress the information. And this ties to the idea that the whole world could be simulated, because what we say, those of us who believe simulation theory is a valid thing says that the world is really information that gets rendered for you, and the information gets compressed. And a lot of these weird things in quantum mechanics, et cetera, is all about finding ways to compress information, and you know, to do that.
I really like that. I really like that. I want to spend more time investigating what you said, but I think that leads you down a more proper path to what's going on. It's another way of looking at the world, for sure. I want to ask you my second question. How would you define the Akashic records? I talk a lot about the Akashic records. What does Riz think about the Akashic record?
Well, you know, I mean, I've studied the Akashic records in one sense, more of an esoteric sense, but you know, the way that I talk about simulation theory, one of the ways I talk about it is particularly when you look at near-death experiences, right? And near-death experiencers report a life review, many of them, not all of them. You know, one of the guys that I learned about this idea was a guy named Daniel Brinkley, who wrote a book called Saved by the Light. He was struck by lightning, had a near-death experience, a very full one. It had like all the stages of the near-death experience, and he always called it a holographic panoramic life review. And he said he had to replay every single moment of his life, but from the other person's point of view, right? And he had literally shot people, so he got to see what it was like shooting himself and killing. But then he had to see the effects that it had on the wife and the children of the person that he killed or that he shot, like in the military. And so there was this ripple effect. And so for me, as an engineer and computer scientist, I say, well, if you're going to play it back, it has to be recorded somewhere, right? It has to be recorded in a database. What I like to say, it's in the cloud, right? In Silicon Valley, that's what we say. You know, we say it's recorded in the cloud, and then you can replay it. And so for me, the Akashic Records is like that storage facility that contains all of that, all of the play. And sometimes there are things that people don't even remember, but they see it in their life review, or things they weren't even present for, like I talked about, the ripple effect. So it's almost like a giant database of all of the events that had been happening. So that's how I think of it, you know, coming at it from a simulation theory perspective.
Yeah, I think
like a log file, right?
Yeah, like a log file. Like a log file records all the requests, but like a super high-tech log file, because it's storing, like in Islam, right? There's this idea of the recording angels, right? And they have them in Christianity and in Judaism as well. In the Bible, there's a statue in Washington, D.C. of like Archangel Michael, I think it is, with a book, and he's recording down who gets into heaven, who doesn't. Like in the Islamic traditions, they get into much more specifics. They say there are two angels. They even have names for them, the Kiram and Kitab and Raqib and Atid. And one of them writes down all your good deeds, and one of them writes down all your bad deeds, right? This is kind of the origin of, like, you know, the good angel and the bad angel on your shoulders, you know, the jinn and the devil and the angel telling you to do good things and bad things. But they said they write down everything in the scroll of deeds, and at the end of your life, the scroll of deeds is open for you. It's a log, but of course that's a metaphor, right? And you have to read it. Again, that's a metaphor. It doesn't mean there's actual physical angels there writing down with a feather pen in Chinese and Arabic, writing down everything you did as a log, right? That's ridiculous. It just means that everything is being recorded by these recording angels. And so it's a log, but it's more of like a holographic, three-dimensional log where you can replay. Just like among the most famous, like the most popular content on YouTube, you know what it is? It's video game sessions. You are watching a recording of a video game session, right?
Yeah.
That's like number one or number two in terms of top content on YouTube. So that's how I think of the Akashic records. Okay.
Yeah, and that's cool how like my kids, like, they play Fortnite, but they love to watch other people play Fortnite, so that leads into the concept: could our experiences be like the Truman Show, or like Shakespeare said, all the world is a stage, and men and women are merely the players? So yeah, we love to watch the other players and how they play the game. We can learn from that. So it all goes back to the video games for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, different metaphors, these ancient ideas are just metaphors. I mean, they're expressed as metaphors because the ancient people had to understand what they were saying, right? And so today, I mean, one of the reasons I wrote this book, Wisdom of a Yogi, which is the subtitle is Lessons for Modern Seekers from Yogananda's autobiography, was Yogananda was one of the first Indian gurus to move to the US in 1920, 100 years ago. And he was taking the ancient metaphors of the world as a dream, and he was updating it using modern technology. He said the world is like a movie projector, right? It's light and shadow on the screen. It's a play of chiaroscuro, was a word that he used, which is an art style. I had to look it up. It was like an art style that uses like dark and light to actually show you that what's happening, like the actors are no more, you're no more dying than the actors who play the dying character in a movie are actually dying, but certainly the suffering is there. Because he saw, speaking of world wars, which is in the news these days, he saw the devastation of World War I, and he was meditating to try to figure out, Lord, why do you allow this suffering? And he saw these visions back then there was newsreels, so it was like these newsreels at the theater in black and white, but he saw like a full color panoramic review like of everything that was happening, and he even like jumped into somebody's body and experienced it, and said that this is all suffering, but it's all part of an elaborate play, right? It's like a play within a play. And so he used the movie projector metaphor, and he would encourage his students to look away from the screen, look towards the light that's doing the actual projection. But I believe if he were alive today, he would use an updated metaphor, which is it's like a movie, but it's an interactive movie. We have scripts, but we can change the scripts. We're playing together, but we're also watching in the audience. What does that sound like? It sounds like a interactive, massively multiplayer online role-playing game. So
yeah, big entertainment for sure.
Yeah.
And
unfortunately, I do have to get going
question.
soon, but
yeah, I've got one question from the chat. I've been looking through all the questions here, and this is the one question we've come up with from everybody. I do apologize, guys. He is on limited time. Trust me, I could sit and talk to this man for the next 6 hours and still wouldn't be satisfied. I can already tell that. But do you think, Ted DeJour, one of our speakers from the last conference, asked, do you think entropy plays a role in this idea? Can simulations and multiverses degrade? So we did speak of entropy as far as what you were talking about earlier, how it increases on one side and decreases on another. But in a simulation multiverse scenario, would simulations degrade over time?
Would simulations degrade over time? Well, that's an interesting question. And it has a lot of different aspects, right? Because one way for it to degrade would be if you're running lots and lots of simulations and you overload the processors, right? Then it degrades in terms of the quality. But I think, perhaps what he's talking about is entropy degrade. Now, I tie entropy into the idea of information entropy, right? And so what happens is the more entropy there is, the less you can compress the information, right? So think of it this way: if you have 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, you have 10 bits. You don't really need 10 bits to keep track of it. They're all the same, right? They're all just ones, right? But if every bit has a different value, that's called information entropy. Like you can't figure out what the next bit is going to be. So you have to store more and more information to the point where you get to, okay, you have to store 10 bits, right? Now that number goes up to 10 to the 80 number of, particles in the universe, which is a huge number, right? Once you get to these physics numbers, you get to huge numbers. And so, I would say that if there's more entropy, that you almost have to keep track of more information, or you have to do what we call garbage collection in computer science, right? Where you collect up all the information that's not being used and you kind of clean it all up. So I think that is part of what happens. But remember, the weird part about a simulation is a simulation can stop running and then it can start running again, and you wouldn't know. If you're inside the simulation, you would just think that's just the same next step. But it could have been a year, right? I can pause my Microsoft Word, put it in the background. It's not running as many tasks as, say, Zoom or the web browser is, right? So you could time inside versus outside, so you could clean up. But yeah, I think simulations and multiverses can degrade, and that's part of the reason for the pruning that I think. So this is just my ideas that I put in the simulated multiverse. I don't think this is an accepted physics idea. That not only do you have this kind of infinitely expanding, but you start pruning it. And there's some intelligent force looking at different multiverses and trying, and that's what quantum computing is about. And so that's why I get into the whole idea of the quantum computer. Like the multiverses are being used for something. So.
And I think that's a great answer, Riz. I appreciate you being here with us today, sir. It has been an honor, a pleasure, and a joy having this discussion with you. Like I said, I'm sure we can carry this on another 6 to 8 hours and still not be satisfied with enough.
Thank you so much, Riz. Thank you so much for joining us
Absolutely.
today.
It was great meeting you.
I one more question, though. I have to ask you where people can find your work and your books and stuff, man.
Yeah, absolutely. So my website is called zenentrepreneur.com. And that was based on the title of my very first book that I wrote many years ago called Zen Entrepreneurship. And from there, they can see my link to my blog. I had a podcast for a little while called The Simulated Universe. And they can get links to my Twitter. I'm at Riz Stanford. I still call it Twitter, even though it's changed its name, right? And on Instagram, I'm at Riz Cambridge. And the reason for those names is that's just where I happened to be when I set up the account. I was in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and I was at Stanford as a student when I set up. Yeah, Riz Stanford.
So you guys make sure you mark that down. If not, you can catch the show on demand, rewind, and write it all down. Make sure you go check out his work, folks. Get his books. They're absolutely incredible, really great reads. And if you've enjoyed this conversation, then you're definitely going to enjoy his books. Riz, thank you so very much for being here with us on IMEC today, sir. It has been amazing.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you, Riz.
Rizwan Virk, ladies and gentlemen. Rizwan Virk.
Woo! Awesome.
You have a safe day, sir. And ladies and gentlemen, we appreciate every one of you guys being here. Do make sure you guys check those out. We got links coming into the chat right now. So make sure you check those sites out. Man, what an incredible conversation. I didn't want that to end.
No, he's so good. He's so aligned with everything that we're doing, and he's so well spoken, especially about the simulation theory. Just brilliant. And also,
you know what? I got called out at the last conference for not combining theories. Rightfully so. I'm not good at that yet. But if you take Tom's theory of the LCS, underlie that with his concepts of the multiverse, and make the LCS the driver of his concept, these work together amazingly well, in my opinion.
Yeah. And looking at the world as a dream, that this is one waking dream, that's another way to look at the simulation. And that ties into the concepts that Riz was referring to from if you haven't read the original, this is Riz's book, Wisdom of a Yogi, but he's covering autobiography of a yogi, which is that ancient class. Well, it's not ancient. It's only a few decades old. The book about autobiography of a yogi.
Semi-ancient, right?
I guess these days.
I'm ancient at this point, right? Some people say I am. Anyway. But ladies and gentlemen, once again, we thank you guys for being here. We've tried to give you guys a couple moments to maybe refresh your drinks and whatnot, but we've got some surprising news from the natural world, folks. We're going to get into our general IMEC show now that you guys are used to. We don't normally have a guest and a regular show, but tonight, like I said, buckle in, strap it down. It's going to be a long one and it's going to be fun. So surprising news from the natural world. Our sponsors for this week, folks, as you know, the sponsors usually line up right here at IMEC. And who is our first sponsor this week? Sponsor number one is the Australian spotted tail quoll. It is back. And you guys know, I say this every time, I have a soft spot in my heart for these Lazarus animals. It has blown my mind how many I've seen and tracked in the last 5 years or so. Frank Powling Sai, a trout farmer in Beachport, South Australia, heard a panic from his chickens on September 26th and found a spotted creature in a dead chicken. The spotted tail quoll, and ladies and gentlemen, this is a brand new word for me here, let alone creature, was captured in a plastic chicken cage. He caught him in a plastic cage. It wasn't too ferocious, luckily, and identified as a spotted tail quoll or tiger quoll. I really hope I'm saying that word right. The largest native carnivore left on Australian mainland. The last official sighting in South Australia was in the 1880s until September 26th of this year, ladies and gentlemen. Wow.
Yeah, this is really, I think all the Lazarus species are wow, but when it's more than 100 years, seems like it deserves double wow. And this thing is so fierce. It's like, it looks like it's, people would know about it. You'd hear warnings, keep your small pets inside, if they had been running around. I guess Australia's fierce, but this is one of the larger predators. So how would it go unnoticed, unobserved for more than a century? Amazing.
Absolutely. How do you miss something like that? And understand, this isn't just any old Joe creature, as we explained here. Largest carnivore left on the Australian mainland. This ain't no skinny thing. It's the largest carnivore there. How do you miss that? The animal's coming up missing. Like, how do you not see what's eating them, right?
Exactly.
But over 100 years, this thing has been missed. And all of a sudden, ladies and gentlemen, back on our timeline, merged back into our timeline, possibly the Australian spotted tail quoll, back after 130 years. That's big. And our next, I just want to make sure nobody else had anything to throw in before we carry on there. Our next sponsor number 2, whitefish. Whitefish. Scientists thought extinct is actually abundant. Wow, we've got some really problematic scientists lately, folks. Like, these guys have no idea what creatures are on this planet. They just keep finding things that we lost.
This kind of reminds me in your house when the keys kind of move around, or socks are missing. These are some of the early reality shifts, which turn out to be now called personal Mandela effects. Same thing, but now we're looking at species, basically. So it's like on any scale, at any size, these things can go missing for 130 years or what have you. This one wasn't gone quite so long, disappeared in the 1940s, but it's pretty remarkable that it went from being extinct to suddenly abundant. Just, they were looking in the wrong place. That if you just look over here around the North Sea and the Baltic, they're back in huge numbers. That is kind of weird.
Yeah, it's not like they just found a couple. Like you just said, they thought they were extinct, and they're not only not extinct, they're like superbly abundant. Again, how do you miss this? Unless it's been here the whole time, but we haven't.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, we keep seeing these animals coming onto the timeline. It's not even coming back onto the timeline. And again, we've had enough that I can definitely consider this a phenomenon at this point, right? Every month we have 2 to 3 minimum Lazarus creatures. I'm pretty sure that's not a normal thing. Every 6 months, maybe 2 to 3, every month, Cynthia.
That is where it starts becoming noticeable. And I think that's one of the things that we're doing as this organization, International Mandela Effect Conference. We highlight that and make sure people notice this is not a small blip. It's not something that happened once, like, whoops, little mistake. No, it's ongoing. It's steady. This is something we can expect to see.
Gotcha. It's crazy because we've been seeing it more, and you're right, it is picking up. It's increasing. It's expanding. We're seeing it become even more quick, even more Lazarus animals, more animals that have been gone even longer from the time. I'm telling you, dinosaurs are on their way. You guys think I'm crazy. We're going to be walking around with pterodons at some point, right? Oh, we didn't know. We found one on this little island just out of Australia. We had no idea they were there. Just completely missed them, right? That's the equivalent of what we're talking about here, right?
Absolutely. And I think we're tracking some of these. We're keeping an eye on what is it, the dodo, of course. We've covered that many times, and I think Christopher Anatra's had some special some of his quantum businessman videos as well. So we're keeping an eye on it to see. Yeah.
Before we move into our next sponsor, when do you think of a giraffe, sir? Think of a giraffe. Could you describe to me the basic features of a giraffe, sir?
Well, I think everyone knows what a giraffe looks like. And I've actually created some videos about Mandela effects for myself about giraffes. One is that they can eat meat and bones. They've been known to eat the carcasses of animals, and they suck the marrow out of the bones. There's a type of giraffe called the dark giraffe, which is a giraffe that's dark with spots. It has the spots that we all know about.
It has spots? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And there's another type of giraffe called the Rothschild's giraffe, which I talk about in my videos as well. So, but I think everyone has an idea of what a giraffe looks like, right? So
I'd like to think so. So every giraffe I've ever seen has a long neck, really tall, and spots. Would that be the general description of a giraffe?
I'd say so.
All right, next slide then. Because it turns out that is not every giraffe. Spotless giraffes, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to say this again. Spotless giraffes in Tennessee, my backyard, right here in my backyard, my hometown state of Tennessee and Africa. If you think that's a long way away from each other, you are correct. You know a map pretty well. Yes. Tennessee's Brights Zoo reported the birth of what they thought to be follow us here, the sole living spotless giraffe. In early September, the Giraffe Conservation Foundation announced a young spotless Angolan giraffe was photographed in Namibia, Africa. A first for the continent. Now, this is getting pretty wild. A first ever spotless giraffe, sole living spotless giraffe in Tennessee. Then all of a sudden, across the other side of it's not other side of the world, a long way away, we have the same thing happen over there. Now, this is fascinating. Experts say the lack of spots could be a genetic mutation, but it's difficult to know for sure. So they had the exact same genetic mutation in two different places at the same time. I thought genetic mutations were based on environment. Kind of throws a wrench into that concept.
Oh, there's 100th giraffe effect, right?
Right. There we go. The 100th giraffe. If we get 100 of these, will we stop seeing spots on giraffes? Like that really makes you wonder there. What's that, Shane?
Oh, no, nothing added to that.
I think the gold color is significant, and it seems like there's something going on. We've tracked golden animals before, and these are just pure gold giraffes. So to me, that's quite relevant somehow. It seems positive to me, like the golden timeline that we talk about sometimes. And
you can tell when it bothers somebody because they say something like, maybe we don't always need to have explanations for everything. We don't. Why don't we just simply marvel at the wonders of nature? Like Stephanie Fennessy from our article here. I don't need to know why. Just let's just enjoy it. In other words, this is scary and I can't handle it. Right?
Yeah, Chris was going to say something too.
Yeah, I was
Go
going to
ahead,
say
Chris.
too, if you think about the word spotless, that could mean clean, that could mean pure.
Yes.
So, maybe these giraffes coming onto the timeline being golden, representing something more clean and pure. And then in one of my past videos, I've talked about the concept of the Rothschild's giraffe and how that could be a way to keep a presence on a timeline, which ties into something else I talk about these statues that have crystal eyes that have been appearing on the timeline, where beings that are anchored into that statue can observe the timeline and see how it's going. So maybe this is a sign that the timelines are becoming more spotless or becoming a little bit more pure as we continue to go up into the higher frequencies. Just a concept to think about.
I like that. That sounds nice. How good can it get?
Pretty good.
And riffing off of that, actually, if the idea that I've been following, the prophecy idea, is true, and we've seen this with the cornucopia, the lack of cornucopia, we've seen a major loss of abundance in this world on all corners, not just in America, it's been on all corners. So if this is true, following the spotless giraffe, the golden giraffe, the cleanliness, as you were saying, we could be coming into a more pure timeline, a rise back up from where we've fallen down at. So if that be the case, that could very well be a good sign that we're seeing.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, there's
Prophetically
big
speaking.
changes going on behind the scenes. For sure.
Definitely interesting. I just thought about that the other day, by the way, with the cornucopia, and I'm glad it got brought up today, because I've been trying to figure out for a while, how would that fit into the theory of prophecy? Well, we lost cornucopia, we've lost abundance. Oh my goodness. Okay, that makes sense.
Yes. But it's not lost and gone
Alright,
forever.
No, definitely not. It could very well come back. It could be turning around. We could be seeing a more spotless society, a more pure society. Hopefully
Yes.
pure in love. That would be nice. And I don't mean
Yeah.
pure ethnically. I mean like pure-hearted, pure loving, pure. You guys know what I'm saying. I want to make that clear to those listening.
Yeah, compassion, kindness. Yes.
Yeah, and it's our birthright for all of us to have abundance, not just the select few have abundance. So I believe that, like, what's happening in the world right now, things are starting to flip, almost like the sun's magnetic poles are starting to flip. They're actually in that progression right now, which I think happens every 12 or 13 years, that type of a thing.
Thanks.
So yeah, there's things that are going on that's going to be like resetting how the world works and what's compatible with the world. So there'll be certain things that are just no longer compatible. So we hear about all these negative things going on in the world. Those won't be compatible in a higher frequency Earth. They're just going to like somehow just break apart and just disappear. So, and then, which of those timelines are we going to be on? So, and we just want to keep our frequency high, keep our love and all that like at a very high level, and stop watching the news, basically, because that's just all a big thing to keep us down and down and down. So
Yep. Propaganda machine that wants us to manifest for them instead of for ourselves.
exactly.
Mhm.
I 100% agree with that, Chris. Stay out of the negative emotions, stay towards the positive, uplifting, high vibe emotions, if you will.
Right.
Which, believe me, I've had some incidents this week, among others, that have proven just how difficult that is in practice. Because we can say be happy and high vibing all day, and I'm one of the like most upgoing, like happy-go-lucky people I know, aside from maybe Cynthia Sue Larson, who puts me to shame. But I think it's kind of hard to compete with that kind of happiness and level of joy. But just the same, even I find situations, and I know, Cynthia, you have too. I know this for a fact. I've witnessed it. That no matter how happy, easygoing person you are, there's going to be that moment where I'm being kind. I really am, but it's, oh my God. I'm mad. I'm extremely upset. I'm trying to be kind, but it's failing at this point, right? It's hard to do. It really is at times. And for those listening out there, especially, like we say, well, just be happy, be upbeat. But that's not always the easiest thing in practice, is it?
No, it's not. I sometimes need to remember if I'm getting angry or sad or frightened or scared, just to give that excess energy that I don't need. It's drama energy. Give it to Source, give it to Creator, give it to God. And sometimes I forget that if I'm angry, and then I turn to Archangel Michael. It's funny that Riz was talking about Archangel Michael, because Michael reminds me. I just say, "What's that again? What do you do, Archangel Michael, when you're angry?" And he always reminds me, "Give it to God." I'm like, right, thank you. Easy to forget sometimes when you're angry, really.
So
angry.
when you get locked in these fear cycles, or have been watching the news and the propaganda machines got you worried and anxious and stuff, give it to God.
Yep.
Just don't let it really sit and vibe with you where it's going to start affecting you. Would you guys agree with that?
It's toxic stuff. Yeah, absolutely.
And I think we have definitely wound our way back around, because that is what the spotless giraffe could be showing us, is that toxicity could be being washed away from our society eventually, right?
I like the way that shows up on two continents too. The same continent where Nelson Mandela originally was, and then the site Tennessee. That's where we're coming for our next conference next year. So I love that. I like that.
Oh my goodness.
I love it.
Didn't even catch that connection till just now.
Yeah. It's a good sign for us.
Chris, would you say that possibly in the two different continents, which makes me ask the question, could they be protectors, sir?
I did not hear that question.
Could they be protectors, defenders?
Of the spotless draft?
Yes.
I'm getting more of the dark animals are more of the protectors, and the white animals that they do the protecting as well. I'm not really getting that for that particular giraffe.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I appreciate it, sir. And going from something that's getting a little more single colored to something that is quite multicolored. Actually, the rainbow is manifesting itself again, ladies and gentlemen. We've seen rainbow mountains, we've seen rainbow rivers, we've seen rainbow lakes, we've seen rainbow fish, which isn't all that odd. However, this one is. You guys ever heard of a warm-blooded moonfish? A warm-blooded fish?
I've always heard fish, like reptiles, are cold-blooded. They're not warm-blooded, so this is news for me. I've never heard of a warm-blooded fish. This is
They
shocking.
normally are in a much colder temperature, being in water, right? That doesn't
Yes.
exactly stay a super warm temp, and the further down you go, the colder it gets. So you would need a cold-blooded creature to exist in such general conditions, right?
And this seems like it's news to the biologists too, because apparently it's only since 2015 that anybody's known that a fish was warm-blooded. So that means when
So
I was
what we have
going to
here-
school, never mentioned this.
Go ahead.
Well, it's new in our world of biology to have the knowledge that at least this one fish, the opa, which is a huge fish, again, not a tiny thing. It's not like some small creature. This is big. And for it to be fully warm-blooded is astonishing.
Yeah, I was going to say too, like
So
when
we're
you
looking.
look.
Go ahead.
Sorry. When you look this up online, it says the opa is the only known warm-blooded fish, and then those other references, there are at least 20 other species of fish that are known to be warm-blooded. So it seems like it's like conflicting information online as well. So there's definitely something going on with the timelines here.
Thank you. This is interesting. So another one to keep an eye on is that little door to warm-blooded fish. Someone's got their foot in the door and it's apparently opening. Interesting.
Exactly.
Are you telling me these have grown since the research was originally done earlier, this week?
Yeah,
A couple weeks ago?
Yeah, a couple weeks ago I was putting this together, the last few weeks. And so, yes, it does sound like that, Jerry. You're right. Things have changed in a few weeks. Now, this is not a surprise to our community or to ourselves. Like I've looked, I think we've all had this happen, right? You're doing a search and something changes right in front of your eyes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So.
Absolutely.
I know what I read a moment ago, but that's not what that says. Wait a minute.
Right.
Exactly.
But when we put a show like this together, you're right. This is something that I was fact checking. I put the slides together, so absolutely, I was looking to see, are there others? At the time I did this a couple of weeks ago, there were not others. So that has just changed. Thank you. Very interesting.
This is something that my good friend Eva from Once Upon a Timeline, as you guys know, discusses a lot. We've been in the backstage on Rip and Rabbit Hole discussing this quite a bit. The fact that something comes into reality normally is a myth or a joke or just a concept, and eventually it becomes a thing, a Mandela effect, and then all of a sudden there's more of them, and then all of a sudden it's been here for 20 years. It keeps working its way, meandering its way into reality itself, worming its way in, if you will. And Eva has noted this over her years doing her show. So this is another one we've caught in just a couple weeks. Like you said, you did the original research. There's one, that's it. That is so strange. How weird. There's this one fish. That was actually a discussion in the email chain. How weird, this one fish is warm-blooded. And now we find today that there's 20 plus species of fish that are warm-blooded.
Yes, exactly.
Wow. Like, that's fascinating that we keep seeing this over. And this is another element of the Mandela effect that I think is actually getting glossed over, that probably should, now that it's become so consistent.
I think Eva pointed this out on her talk that she gave in, was it the 2020 IMEC conference? She did cover some of this. Yeah, so people can check that on our YouTube channel as well. And I think Chris did an interview with Eva as well, which was worth watching. So we've got some good videos on our channel. People should go back and check those out.
I did an interview with Eva.
Didn't you? For the 2020 conference for IMEC? Am I imagining?
A digital interview?
I thought I saw it. I'm pretty sure I saw it.
You know what? People keep telling me about things that I swear I never did.
So, oh my gosh.
It's happening to me all the time. I'm like, I didn't talk about that, or I didn't do that. And like, yeah, you did. I'm like, no, I didn't.
I loved it. I thought that was such a great interview, but okay, maybe I'm confused. Anybody else remember that one? I'll check.
Yeah, there was an interview for every speaker we had that we released prior to their talk on those days.
I'm pretty sure
Eva was there, but she. We're talking about the
2020, the online.
Yeah, the online conference. Yeah.
Maybe I'm mixed up, but I thought so. Okay.
Well, somebody did an interview with her. Who was it? One of us did an interview with her, and it wasn't me.
Okay.
This is funny. Start off talking about fish. Next thing, brand new Mandela effect. Love it.
Welcome to IMEC, ladies and gentlemen. IMEC WORLD. Check us out.
And we're not the
we're going to get into some more that we actually experienced together in person as a group here later on.
Yes.
That were really, really fascinating.
Yes.
Apparently, the beach that this was found on is also well known for strange things showing up on it.
Yeah. Maybe we can look up and see if we can find that. But anyway, we can move on to the next sponsor too.
Yeah, let's do that while we have somebody searching for that interview with Eva. Just see if it's still there. That's gonna bother me. So, where do pearls grow?
Well, I thought it was oysters, right?
Yeah, that's what I was always taught.
It's like a little grain of sand gets in an oyster, and it protects itself and puts this smooth protective coating around that sand. And it keeps adding layer after layer. And it takes a long time to grow a beautiful oyster, so they have great value. And to grow the pearl in an oyster. I've never heard of this until this last month. This is new to me.
Much like oyster pearls, clam pearls prices depend on quality, size, type, and color. So there are actually numerous colors they come in. A clam pearl can range from $300 to $1,500 depending on quality. A natural clam pearl is 8.8 centimeters. Carats, and was valued at $2,000 on market in May 2022. Very recent again. This summer, a Rhode Island couple went out to dinner, and this is the picture you see in front of you, ladies and gentlemen. unknowingly ordered what would become their engagement ring. At dinner, you heard that right, a pearl found inside one of the clams that they had ordered. Sandy Sikorsky started eating a clam when she felt something round and hard. What the heck? She thought she spit out a tooth, but it turned out to be a large pearl that they later would go on to make into an engagement ring and get married. This is amazing, or at least get engaged.
Yeah. So
this is wild.
Yeah, this is wild. Like in my old timeline, it was only oysters that can make pearls. Now in this timeline, it's clams. It's actually also freshwater mussels can make pearls. Different colors of blue, gold, lavender, black. It's amazing. So this is all completely brand new for me. So yeah, clams and freshwater mussels could not make pearls in my old timeline.
And I found the interview with Chris and Eva from 2020. So,
oh, cool.
Yeah.
I'll have to watch it.
Well, I hope you enjoy it, sir.
Yeah.
It was awesome. It was such a good interview. Really good. I thought it was great.
That's great.
Wow.
Yeah, 2020. It's challenging to type in IMEC these days because other stuff pops up that didn't used to.
Right. Thanks to the news and going ons in the world, we've been robbed. They've robbed our anagram, unfortunately. And we can't copyright that, unfortunately. Like, you can't copyright an anagram. Anybody can use, words in a certain order, Yeah. Unless we made a logo with our anagram. Anyway, moving on. A lot of cool stuff coming for next year, folks. You just wait.
Yeah.
But this year, we have had an amazing year. We have some updates from our board members, ladies and gentlemen. First off, Cynthia Sue Larson. We got together, a little over a month ago in Connecticut now. Wow, has it been that long? Sure has. Yeah. And that was amazing. How have you been since that conference, Cynthia? How's your month been?
It's been busy because I've been helping to get the word out every time one of our videos goes up from the conference. I was making sure I did the best I could to get the announcements on social media. IMEC has a Twitter account. We've got a Facebook account. And it seemed like every weekday for the last 3 weeks, we were putting out another beautiful presentation or a panel. And we were joining in with conversation in the live stream. It was a live stream chat. It was a premiere of the video.
Right.
The Patreon subscribers got to see it first, but that kept me kind of busy. And it's been a busy month anyway, because I did interview Rizwan Virk for my Living the Quantum Dream. And that just is premiering today. That I was talking with him mostly about wisdom of a yogi and some of the things like bilocation that has happened to me and happens to Yogananda. And we're talking about how that ties in with the simulation theory. And I think people are going to love that conversation. As you said today, Jerry, we could talk to him for 6 hours, and I've had the good fortune now to have 2 hours of his time. And so both that interview and then today, they're beautiful. And then my interview most recently with Regina Meredith just came out on Open Minds on Gaia. That was released. So that's a big thing.
Oh,
that came
awesome.
out talking about transhumanism, revhumanism, and the Hopi, and how that all ties together. And then I think it's been a while since I talked, but I was about other interviews I've done. I was on Alex Ferrari's Next Level Soul. So another big opportunity to talk about IMEC, to talk about what we're doing here. And then, of course, I got my newsletter that comes out every month. So lots of things happening. I'm just going to mention one thing from the newsletter. Hold this up if you can see it. It's from the issue of the October Reality Shifters. There we go. So this is that's the back of the cover of a book, and then here's the book cover. And what happened is it's a constant changing. Now, Riz Virk today was talking about these multiverse theories, and they were saying I loved it when he said in one universe you'll have some physical constants. In another universe, you'll have different physical constants. Now, people that follow my Reality Shifters website and Rupert Sheldrake know, obviously, constants change. And I've mentioned this in some of the IMEC presentations I've given. But this month is fascinating because I heard from, this is basically a chemist. She noticed that the Faraday constant has changed. She wrote papers, and her name is Dawn Marie Bernardi. And she said that she'd always used the number 96,487 coulombs per mole was the Faraday constant. But on the back of her book, and that was that thing that's hard to see, it's in my Reality Shifters News, October 2 and 2023 edition. There it is. It's this part here. So it shows, it's like, reality residue. It's showing, that this is what she remembers, the 96,487. Now it's always been, never changed, always was, some strange other number, 96,485 coulombs per mole. And people may say, what's the big deal? A constant changing is a big deal. And so when she wrote to me and said, what's going on with this? I was able to give her the good news that that's not the only constant that's been changing. Rupert Sheldrake has been tracking this, and it's kind of an ongoing phenomenon. And then, of course, I've got lots of other stories from around the world and other stuff. So that's my big news. I'll keep it small. It's been an exciting couple of months. And there's Jerry.
That is excellent, Cynthia. Oh my goodness, what incredible information there. Guys, if you haven't already, you can get a copy of this newsletter absolutely free by going to realityshifters.com. It is over in the chat already. If you are in the chat with us, realityshifters.com. You're going to sign up over there for the newsletter. You're going to save that site in your bookmarks. You got to go there every week, and you're going to give her all the time you can. No, I'm kidding, but definitely check the site out. Absolutely great work over there. Next up, we have on our list yours truly, I guess, Jerry Hicks. So I've been quite busy. I had an incident, ladies and gentlemen. I had a moment. I am not a fan of TSA. And I'm going to be very clear. I'm not a fan of TSA. They made me mad in the airport. They stole my monster. It made me mad. They stole my monster. So I tried to take it through. It was closed. It was all good. No problem whatsoever. They still said, oh, you can't have that. We're taking it.
They stole what?
Unless you want my monster drink, just my canned drink of Monster.
Okay.
They said, well, you can't have that. And they took it. They said, well, you can go back around and come back through our, fill you up process again if you would like. No, it's already been crappy enough. You know what? Enjoy your drink. I had no problem giving it to the guy, to the other person come up and just slung it into a trash can. And my head exploded. I was mad. Walking through the airport. Now, guys, I'm walking next to John. John Kerwin is one of the speakers from our conference.
Yes.
And he's a very, very Christian guy. He's a pastor nonetheless. We're in the airport. I'm walking next to him. We're walking down the aisleway. I'm not in the best mood. I am extremely upset, as a matter of fact, about what has just occurred with this TSA agent. And I am being very vocal about my frustration. And I said some words next to that man that I probably should not have let slip out of my mouth. So we're walking along, and I said, those GD idiots. And it dawned on me the moment the words come out of my mouth. You're walking next to a Christian pastor, dude. That was not the smartest thing to do. So I immediately apologized to him, and he was cool. He's, you got to worry about the man upstairs. That's fair. Getting on a plane, I prayed a couple of times before I took off. Yes. But I thought that was it. One of those moments, like, again, going back to what you were saying, it's easy to say, be happy, stay upbeat and I normally, as you guys know, I'm very upbeat, happy, go lucky, nothing gets to me kind of guy. But there are moments in all of our lives, whether it be small or big, that can trigger us, that they can make us a little upset and angry, and we can do things we normally would not say or do. And that was one of those moments. That, as we were headed out from IMEC, that was just one of those things that happen. I thought it was kind of funny in retrospect, but yeah, I kind of made a fool of myself there. So I've wasted enough time on the mic. You guys can find my work. I'm still doing the shows over at the rippinrabbithole.com every Wednesday and Thursday night. Tonight we are talking about wartime UFOs, Foo Fighters, not the band, the ones from the wars, right? Definitely a show you guys want to check out. Tomorrow night, Freedom Report News on Thursday nights on the rippinrabbithole.com. We cover political matters on that episode. So if you are interested in those type of matters, do come over and check us out over on the rippinrabbithole.com. Once again, the link is in the description. We have Wednesday and Thursday nights. We've also added 2 new host in the last couple months, so we're definitely growing the network over there. Now the only nights we don't have shows is Mondays and Saturdays, so once we get those filled in, we're going to have content all week long, every week, ladies and gentlemen. So that's me. That's where you can find me. Also, of course, at imec.world. It has been so great, Cynthia, in the chat with those premieres and stuff, actually conversing with different people and hear what they have to say about it. And it was really good to see more outside audience interaction opposed to the people that were there with us at the time.
It's like we got another conference kind of, as each talk rolled out.
We kind of really did.
Yeah. Love it.
And of course, that's me, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, check us out over in the chat here. I've got the link. Shane Robinson, unbiased and on the fence, sir. How has your month been?
It has been awesome. I've been doing sessions with people, and I actually got a couple of new friends here sent to me by Gypsy JJ. I wanted to show you guys. They're Halloween.
All those are awesome.
So they are they actually
and the Scooby.
Yeah, and they actually do say tunes in the way we remember tunes.
Oh,
so she was sending it because it's Tunes of Terror.
No way.
Halloween version. So 2 Mandela Effects, and they're both in their Halloween outfits. I thought it'd be great for our spooktacular show here today. I also wanted to mention that I had a really interesting video that I put out on my channel and transcripts from a Beyond Quantum Healing session. And it got into all sorts of things that you guys in the Mandela Effect community will definitely find interesting. Things about the mud flood and Tartaria and world fairs and incubator babies and Cabbage Patch babies. And I'm not talking about the dolls from the 80s. I'm talking about postcards that trended way back and just a lot of crazy stuff that seems to be possibly inserted into our reality from artificial intelligence. So check it out if you want. And it sounds kind of scary on the surface, but it's a very empowering message about how we can take an active role in creating the world we want to live in.
Yeah, I love the comments on that video too. They talk about how deep it goes and how profound. And it does seem like there's a tie-in with some of the stuff Chris has done too, which is really cool.
Yeah, that's what actually inspired me to put the video out. I just wanted to get the information to Chris because we had a great conversation when we were in Connecticut about some of his ideas with time travel and things in different ways that I hadn't really thought of. And really, that's what I love about coming together and discussing things like that, because I felt like my awareness was expanded, even enough to kind of understand this information as it came through. So I was like, dude, this is like what you were talking about. So that was my first intention, was to share it with Chris. And I thought, let me just put it out. Everybody will enjoy this because, it's I don't know, it's thought provoking.
Yeah, I thought it was really good too. What I part of it too talked about the concept of like walk-ins and how that works, and it just ties in beautifully to other things that myself and other people talk about. And you have this person under hypnosis, and they're revealing the same types of things, and then that leads to other levels. I mentioned this a little bit earlier in the show too about how, like, doctors that do kidney transplants, many doctors are actually NPCs, and NPCs exist in all the different frequency levels. But depending on where we are, let's say there's 12 frequency levels, we are existing. So let's say I'm at a level 7 and Shane, you're at a level 8. We're at a different frequency level. So if that's the case, I'm not really talking to you right now. I'm talking to like another version of you, but not the version where your consciousness is at. But doctors will, mostly they're NPCs, and they'll exist in all the frequencies so that they can do a kidney surgery correctly, no matter where you are. Chiropractors, on the other hand, a lot of them are actually players in the game. So, but it gets like really interesting. But I definitely advise people to watch your video because it's very enlightening and will help people understand more about how this reality works. So thank you for that.
Oh, thank you for the kind words. And
Yeah.
yeah, some of the other information that you just were talking about actually came through in other sessions. So it's really synchronistic and another confirmation, some of what you mentioned. But I will drop that link into the chat, you guys. That's over on my Unbiased and on the Fence channel. But if you guys, people are asking for the link, so I'll drop it in the chat in just a moment. I'll get it for you. Back to you, Jerry.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. This is fascinating. It's really amazing when you get confirmation secondarily to your own sources from a
Yes.
completely different space. Like Chris has the information, and then you come up independently with the exact same information to validate what had been said previously. Like, you can't make that stuff up. That's validation of truth right there, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
That's amazing, guys. I definitely suggest the link now is in the chat over in YouTube. So check that video out. Check his channel out. Shane, what is your channel again for everybody who may be new or don't know it?
Unbiased and on the Fence.
And that's on YouTube, yes?
Yep. And you can, of course, find me on my website, uotf.net, and I have links to all of my socials on there.
uotf.net, which we've also dropped earlier. Yeah, by International Mandela Effect Conference, dropped it in chat, and you go ahead and pop it in there too if you like, sir. And last but not least, the amazing, the incredible, the quantum businessman himself, the Akashic record reader, Christopher Anatra.
Yeah, well, my big news is that I cut my hair.
I like it.
Shifting timelines.
Yeah, exactly. Changing the timelines here, so you can't really keep track of me no matter where I'm at. Just look at my hair and you'll see that I'm in a different timeline. But yeah, so just real brief, came back from a trip from Mexico, actually just returned the other day, and visited all these different temples and sacred sites and complexes near the Guatemala border, all really all over. Spent a lot of time in a van, dirt roads, potholes. But it was a really great experience to see the solar eclipse. There, we went to this we actually hiked up this really tall mountain that looks like it may be the tallest pyramid in Mexico, because there's a whole pyramidal structure at the top of the mountain, and the mountain kind of is shaped like a giant pyramid. So, we watched the eclipse there. I saw firsthand, for the first thing I never saw before, about how when there's a solar eclipse, through the light that's coming through the trees, you can actually see the eclipse on the ground. You can actually see it, which is like a phenomena that for me I guess has always been there, but I've never observed that myself with the solar eclipses that I've seen. So yeah, lots of things going on, things related to Andromeda. Our future selves with Andromeda, Milky Way merging with the Andromeda galaxy. I think science tells us it's not going to happen for another 7 billion years, but there's already evidence that the Milky Way and Andromeda galaxy are actually merging, and work with our future selves related to that. All kinds of really cool stuff. Hung out with some really great people. I mentioned previously too, one of the people there was a teacher in Los Angeles. He taught biology. And he was like I told him about the kidney location, and he spent like hours looking it up online. He's like, no, the kidneys are you're in your lower back. I'm like, no, check it out. So he was like, yeah, so great experiences, and happy to be back, and doing another open tables here. So I'm sure we still have a lot more things to talk about. So
Yep.
Let the show continue.
Absolutely, we do. And where can people find your work, Chris?
Oh yeah, this is a picture that
this?
Chris shared.
Yeah, so this is a picture about the how you could look. So this is a picture of the ground, and you could see the shape of the sun, going through the.
Looks like a bunch of moons on the ground.
Yeah, exactly. Looks like all the half moons. Oh, and by the way, I want to add one more thing. So when we were in Mexico, we were observing the moon. It would be like the orientation of the half moon, the way we remember. And then as the night would progress, it would change to the smiling moon. And I've never seen that. We were all, even though one of the people was from Mexico. I thought maybe because you're near the equator, things look differently. And she was like, no, I've never seen this before. So there's a lot of fascinating things going on with the reality. There's a lot of big changes that are going on for sure. So hold on to your hats, guys, because the upcoming months are going to be very interesting. I'm sure.
Yes.
Well, I can definitely tell you the past month or two has been very interesting, especially the first couple days of September. You see, we had our conference in Connecticut, and you want to talk about some strange effects. Time itself had an issue in the conference, did it not?
It did.
Absolutely.
So if we could go ahead and hit the next slide.
Yeah.
The IMEC 2023 Mandela Effect. Clocks change. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to give you some backstory here. Chris's mind was just absolutely blasted because he's the one that started this all off. Here's what happened. Before everybody got there, he set all the clocks to exactly the same time. There are 3 clocks in this room. They were all synchronized exactly the same time. And as we progressed through the first day, we noticed what had happened, Chris.
Yeah, so the clocks got thrown off. So one seemed to be the accurate time, and one was off by 5 minutes. I think another one, I forget how much time the other one was off, but basically 3 clocks in the room. And even there was someone else that observed it before when we were setting up, that the clocks all said the same time, and then they started to change. So what is time? And I talked about how, everybody that would come to the conference, they were going to jump at least 100 timelines. And then after the conference, I was, tuning into it. I think we all jumped at least 150 timelines. And then there's the concept of time loops. And there's something that happened related to time loops and how they work and how deja vu is tied into that. So there were a lot of very powerful people that were at the conference that were having an effect, who were all doing this trading, behind the scenes, almost like when you're in a video game. Some people have inventory, some people have different, however you want to classify it in the game. And then we all start trading with each other, and we all were giving each other, more and more abilities, and for this and for that. So yeah, the whole concept of time was manifesting itself by looking at the clocks. So you can tell by the expression on my face, I'm like, what is going on here? The clocks are all off. So yeah, another example of how that works. Now, if you're a skeptic, you could say, well, maybe a battery started to die in 1 clock, or the motor in 1 clock but those clocks are all fairly new. They all had fairly fresh batteries as far as I know. So.
And they didn't die the entire conference. We were there, 3 or 4 days. If they were bad batteries, like day 2 or 3, they should have been just not working anymore.
And this was Friday night, right when the conference was starting. We just had our little gathering. That's why I took the picture of Chris, because Chris is like, what is going on? Love it.
Yeah, so the night before the conference started, we had a meet and greet for everybody that came, just kind of come and hang out and enjoy and snack and, just meet each other. And each time we get the Mandela Effect community together, we find some of the most amazing paranormal instances occur that I've ever seen. We didn't have a bilocation, as I know of this time. We did it the first one. But this time, the clocks just all got out of whack, because I really believe you're right, Chris, to a degree. The fact that there was so many of us in that room with that much energy and that much emotion being put off, that much energy, once again, for lack of a better term, that it had an effect on the entire environment around us.
Yeah, we're conscious creators. We are the RPGs. We're not NPCs. So you get that many of us together, and things do change. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead, Jerry. You had a big or there. I want to hear that.
Or, as it was just pointed out in chat, and I like this idea, maybe with the 3 clocks, we all had a choice of what timeline we could exist on. Or it was a version of multiple timelines manifesting.
I like that. And I just wanted to mention too, I see a comment here from Moneybags, and he said the same thing. He said he noticed for the first time ever last night the moon was on its side. Then around 2 a.m. it was upside down Cheshire style. That's exactly what we were observing. So, I've never seen the moon actually change its orientation, in a matter of hours. So
That's huge.
it's huge. It really is huge.
Okay, we got to pay attention, guys. So everybody keep an eye on it. Let us know.
Yeah.
This is very interesting.
Yeah.
Lunatics, look up.
Looney Tunes, new meaning.
That might be the connection. Loony, lunar.
Yep.
That Lunar Tunes sounds like a band name.
Keep in mind too that you've got Looney Tunes. It's now TUNES,
yes.
And then they had the spinoff called Tiny Toons, right? Tiny is spelled
Tiny Toon Adventures.
OONS.
Whoa.
So that kept the old tunes like we remember. So if anything, you could, that's like residual, etc. So yeah, just additional proof that what we remember it being tunes like cartoon was the way it always was. And then I made a whole video about that, about how we're in the final time loop, so to speak, and how this song of the Looney Tunes song like represents that. But I go into that in a video that people can watch. I won't go into that at this moment, but yeah. This is it. Showtime.
Tiny Toon, not tunes, says Moneybags. That changed too. What?
Oh no, it changed again. It's not Tiny Toons, it's Tiny
Adventures,
Toons?
not
No
Tiny
way.
Toons Adventures. Tiny Toons.
Oh, really?
Oh, wow.
Okay, Tiny Toon, not tunes. That's interesting.
Very interesting.
Yeah, it's not changing.
Holy cow! Good one, Moneybags. Appreciate you pointing that out for us.
Wow, it still autocorrects the Tiny Toons, so it must be a fresh change. Huh?
It must be new then. That's
Tiny
another
Toon
way to check
Adventures.
for new ones right there, the autocorrect, right? Because it's
Yeah.
programmed for the most popular one put in.
Or what it's like, one of those happened with me and Suso, right? And you could see the voice chat did it the original way, and then it changed, right? I forgot what word it was, but we were at the Mandela Effect conference, and we watched it. We looked at each other like, did you just see that? It just switched. We both saw it, so it happened.
2019. Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, going
Every
back to
time
our
we get together
conference.
these conferences. Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Cynthia.
Well, I think we have another one that we wanted to. We got some from there we go. The fireball. Speaking of the sky.
Shane and I, we have a story on this one. So we stayed with Chris while we were there. Chris was kind enough to open up his home to us, and we sincerely appreciate that. It was absolutely amazing. Great hospitality there. We were sitting on the back patio area, just talking about everything. Me and Shane hanging out. Something we don't get to do as much as we'd like to. And as we're sitting there talking, a huge fireball streaks across the sky. And Shane's like, wow. I was like, yep, I seen it too. Absolutely. I seen it too. That is too awesome. So
It was bright enough to get your
fireball.
attention.
Exactly.
Wow.
So we agreed. That's our fireball. That's our falling star. We're probably the only people in this world who actually seen this, right? Turns out we were not the only people in the world that actually seen this. It was reported in the newspaper the following day.
How cool is that?
September 25th. So it was the following week. There was a couple of days later. Police reported fireball meteor in Connecticut sky early Friday morning.
That was the first day of the conference, Friday. So very cool.
Oh, did you
However, I would like to point out this is not the same one because our conference was the 1st through the 5th, and that was taken the 25th.
Ah, so it wasn't the same one we captured or
So that's
saw,
a different one. But
Okay.
there
Well,
was now
one.
when we were in Connecticut, there was a news story about it
Yes.
when we were there because me and Shane were like, "We seen that! Oh
That's
my
what I
goodness!"
Yeah, I thought I had the right picture for the right date. That's interesting. Interesting.
So that was another fireball that streaked across the sky after we left.
That's crazy. But I know that
We
one
had-
happened.
Well, we saw it happen. So
Yeah, you did see it, and
Yeah.
it
we
was
both saw
reported.
it.
Yeah.
That was very cool.
So maybe we attracted a multitude of them to the area. Then our energy still
Brought a
resides
meteor
in the
shower,
area.
right?
Yeah, probably.
But
And-
it
and
was
Shane's
really,
got a
really
cool-
awesome event that did occur.
It was. And then Shane got a really cool photo.
Yeah, no, this is crazy because I'm sitting there. I take pictures all the time. I know about keeping my phone still, and I was specifically thinking about that when I took it and held my phone extra still. Where you hold it there, you give it time to focus, you take the picture, you see the screen flash, and you hold it there a little bit longer because whenever it's dark, sometimes the shutters stay open a little bit longer. So my phone was completely still when I captured this picture right
Now,
here.
what's this? This is a panel
This is the
discussion?
panel, our first panel discussion. When, as you can see there, we have Tom Campbell on the screen, and
Yes.
then from from right to left, we have Christopher Anatra, Sean Bond, and then on the left is Reality Bubbles,
Roger Marsh.
Roger Marsh. Right? Sorry about that, Roger. But anyway, yeah. So and you can see there's almost like the version of them, and then a higher version of them, and it's like their positions don't seem like they're doubled. It almost seems like different expressions on their faces when you like really look into it. So anyway, I took it as something anomalous because of the way I captured it and the way I didn't move it, but it came out this way.
The faces are even like differently facing, right?
Yeah, they're slightly different. Even one of Tom Campbell's faces, when you zoom in, seems like it's more smiley than the other. It's kind of funny. It's actually an interesting
Like
picture.
Marsh's face is looking forward and sideways.
Right.
Two different ones.
Wow. That's amazing.
Very cool.
And your camera doesn't do
and
this
what really
a lot.
gets me
No.
Okay.
That's the only one. I believe he showed me that.
Yeah, that was
all
the
his
only
pictures,
one like that. Yeah.
The one before it was great. The one after it was great. It was this one.
Yeah.
And what's fascinating to me about this one, look at the screen.
Yeah, how 3D it looks like
It's a 3D box.
That's what's really, really weird. Yeah.
Why does it have edges like that?
It almost looks like it moved and zoomed a little bit, all in one kind of.
To me, it looks multi-dimensional. Like what?
Yeah.
Like if you're trying to do a 2D photo of 4 dimensions or 5.
Right. Exactly. That's what it reminds me of. That when they show that one shape that you can only see in when you animate it because it's
yeah.
got too many dimensions. I forgot what shape.
The Tesseract.
Tesseract, right?
Yeah, it's really interesting too what cameras can show, because a lot of cameras you can see orbs on them that your eyes can't see, but the camera picks up.
Totally.
I remember there was this one company that made this like pretty inexpensive webcam you could get for your like a security thing you get for your house. It only costs like $25, and all these people started returning them because they would get all these things that they basically were orbs that were like flying by, so they thought it was a defective camera. But actually, the camera was picking up what was going on that the human eye couldn't see.
Just relabel it as a ghost camera, right? Keep selling it.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Nice.
So, yeah, like what cameras are picking up, I think what our eyes are going to start seeing more and more clearly. I don't know if it's anyone else, but I'm noticing too that with the sunlight, when it's a nice sunny day, colors are popping more. Like the vegetation, everything looks greener and brighter and so forth. And is that the cryptochromes in our eyes, those magnetic sensors, maybe they're starting to come online. Maybe our eyes are getting upgraded. Maybe it's just the light from the sun, how the light from the sun is changing. I think literally the sun is literally changing. So yeah, there's a lot of really fascinating stuff going on in the reality.
Yeah, super cool.
Indeed, I would agree. Really fascinating indeed, especially when you get these, like I said, these photos like Shane took, or you get fireballs out of nowhere, or clocks that just want to keep different times, even though they were all set at the same time. Incredibly strange stuff happens when we get together as a community, ladies and gentlemen. Fascinating stuff. And that's not the end of it.
Yay.
Quick click. That's not the end of it. As a matter of fact, we had a really amazing moment here. So one of our speakers, Alicia Thompson, wonderfully sweet lady, absolutely amazing. She sends us a lot of our stuff that we're able to present here. As a matter of fact, I built a whole show one time off just her emails. But she had a presentation. Cynthia, could you walk us through what happened here?
Yeah, this was Monday. And so this is now the last day of our conference. We've now covered some of the amazing things that happened starting Friday night and going Saturday, like the photo Shane took. Now this is Monday. And Alicia, part of her presentation included volunteers coming forward. And she had, I don't know if she called for 3, I can't remember now, but she said she needed some volunteers. And somehow 4 people jumped up. And what's interesting here, let me just read what she,
if I may, she called for 3 and she handed out the dowsing rods, and then she was standing there holding another set. I guess I need a 4th person then. Okay.
Right.
Go ahead.
And so what she sent me, because I asked her to give me an explanation, like what should we say when we present the photos and talk about this on Open Tables? And she said, okay, here's what happened. I was very focused on having everything I needed on hand. So I carefully counted out 6 wire hangers from my mom's closet. I also needed 3 straws to be cut in half for the holders, because they make it so that it's you're holding the holder, but then the rod can swing freely and it's not stuck on your your sweaty hands or whatever. That's why the straws. Okay. So anyway, I double checked the hangers and straws several times before my presentation. The night before the talk, my sister and I straightened out 6 hangers. That would be enough for 3 people. Okay, next slide, Heather. Go to the next slide. There. You can tell my surprise when I realized I had an extra set of hangers while doing the experiment in front of the audience. The fact that I needed another straw and the audience member just happened to have one further reinforces that something odd occurred. And you can see the expression of surprise on her face too. I think a little bit of that, like kind of still wondering, like, how is this even happening?
Like, this tripped her out. Like, from here out, she was just baffled, right?
And you're right. You can see it on the video, so people can check out Alicia's talk. It was from Monday, and it was wild, just to see that look on her face. Like I need a 4th volunteer. That is funny. But maybe couldn't remember offhand if 4 people just came up there. But anyway, it was
wild.
3
people, like I said, and she was standing there holding the rods. Well, I need another person, and then we had to find the straw for the rods, which, like you said, amazingly, somebody said, "Oh, I got one." You do?
Yeah.
Wow. Now, I want to reinforce the reason for the straw real quick. Part of the experiment is using dowsing rods. For those that may or may not know about dowsing rods, the idea is that they can sense outside energies, environments, and have a way of maneuvering so that you can, like that.
Like this.
Right.
It's just so this one, it's got a smooth outer cylinder. So I hold on to it, and then the part that goes inside is free to move. It's not gripped by my hand. Now, it is possible to use just regular coat hangers, and you don't need to have the straw, and you can absolutely do that. And I describe how to do that in my first book, Aura Advantage, just as one of the exercises, dowsing energy and so forth. But if you have the straw, then very easily you can create your own at-home dowsing rod that basically you ask what's a yes, you ask what's a no, you ask what's a maybe, and then you can also calibrate your dowsing rods. You can get things exact and so forth. So you can also do energy work with dowsing rods. There's a lot. I mean, it's just the whole world opens up.
One of the arguments skeptics say is that it's just the micro movements of the muscles in our hands that are making the rods move. So because having a straw or another piece there that would decrease or nullify those micro movements that would cause the actions, that just adds another layer of experimental variable to it. You know what I mean? Like it takes that variable out of play, and it shows that there is something more going on with the energies in the rods and not just, accidentally maneuvering the rods for an outcome, right?
Yeah, there's a whole science to dowsing, and that's a whole huge subject, bigger than we can fully get into today. But it's you're right. There are skeptics about everything. But there are ways to test these things and to show that you're getting something that's true and real. You can factor out the noise, if you will.
Chris, you actually have in your possession, right? You're muted, sir. You are muted. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I just unmuted myself. Yeah, he was using what's called the Albie Einstein principle, right? So you'd hold these dowsing rods.
Oh, do you have the dowsing rods there?
Maybe I do.
That's what I was getting.
Oh,
That's
nice.
exactly what I was. So you have in your presence, sir, if
Yes.
I'm not mistaken.
I have
Yay.
them all here. They were left at the podium, at the conference.
Is there one of them that's very different? Because you're holding them. Does one stand out as the one that showed up, the fourth set? I'm just curious. Are they all pretty much the same, or is one radically different?
One with the gold straw.
Oh, the gold straw would be the fourth.
Yep.
So we
But
know
we have an
which one-
orange straw too, don't we?
or is it?
I don't know.
Well, there'd be two of them, right? That are going to
Yeah,
be
it looks
different.
like the yellow is actually a straw. So that's probably the one. The other ones look like, well, the blue ones look like straws too. I'm
Well,
confused.
they were straws, but they were created by Alicia and her sister before they left home, before
Yeah.
they flew out. They did this at the hotel room or whatever, set them up. But not the yellow. I guess the fourth.
It's
the
either the
seventh
yellow or
and
the
eighth.
orange somebody had in their purse and we chopped it.
Yes, someone chopped up you can tell which one it is because it's different.
Yeah. So there's basically there's 8 of them altogether for 4 people. So
Wow.
it's really interesting how they remembered only doing the 3, and then all of a sudden there's 4 there. So in another timeline, they may have done 4, right?
But do the wires look the same? I'm just curious. We've got material evidence here of Mandela effect apportation.
It looks like it's interesting because I'm looking at the lengths, and some of the lengths are the same, some are a little bit longer, but they look similar. A couple of them are straight. It's hard. It's hard to really tell.
That's very cool.
Yeah,
It's fascinating. It's absolutely fascinating. Like we were discussing, she brought 3 sets, 6 of these, not 8. And she hands them out, and she's standing there holding a set going, I ain't supposed to have one. Wait a minute.
Yeah, and for those people that didn't actually see this, the whole concept is that you hold them on this with the straw, and then I believe she had you think of something negative, and your energy field would turn them a certain way, and then you think of something positive or love or something like that, and they were like open wide up.
Ooh, yeah.
So yeah,
Very cool.
yeah, it was like amazing to see that in action.
And nobody knew which way was right and wrong. Like negative would be one way, positive would be the other, but nobody knew which one was which. So if it was being faked, for instance, and you can watch this on YouTube in her talk, ladies and gentlemen, if it was being fake, you'd have them going in and out and round and about. That's not what we see.
Yeah.
When it's negative, they all go the same way. When it's positive, they all go the same way. I mean, it's just hard to discount when you see stuff like that. You know what I mean? Like nobody knew the right answer, yet they all got the right answer. That's not possible. The larger the group, the more 50-50 it becomes, right?
Right.
And like Gypsy JJ says in the chat, because that's kind of how I knew about it before. She says the rods were used years ago to find water underground, so farmers, for example, would know where to dig a well. And that's kind of what I'd heard. I'd originally heard it was for finding water.
That's how I describe it in my book, Or Advantage. I was in Royston. The museum was closed. I'd gone to the Royston Museum to check out some, this ancient underground, really cool sites, very sacred site, but it was closed. The whole museum was closed. But then the curator of the museum happened to be there. She opened the door and asked, "Where are you from?" I said, "California." And she invited me and my husband in. So we were able to tour the museum of all these ancient artifacts. But the best part was where she showed how to dowse. She said, "Have you done much dowsing?" I said, "No." And she said, "Well, here are some dowsing rods. Why don't you?" And the reason I was there is I'd read the book, The Sun and the Serpent by Hamish Miller, the great dowser. So I was reading about dowsing. And then here I am at the closed Royston Museum. The curator hands me dowsing rods, says, "Why don't you find where the water is in the courtyard right here in front of the Royston Museum?" And so I thought, okay, no problem. And, this should work. And it sure enough does. When you think water, you find water. But remember, the reason I was in Royston is because of the intersection of the Michael and Mary lines. These are male-female intersecting lines that cross the entire planet. And they're different strengths. But every time they intersect, that's where there'd be a cathedral or a sacred site. And these go back thousands of years. All of the Egyptian Pyramids would, of course, be at intersection points and so forth. That's the way humans notice the energy. So when I was dowsing for the water, it does water. When I douse for energy, it does energy. And that's the power of our consciousness and our access to these dimensional levels of conscious agency that we can learn to operate with. So it's a huge topic. I do dive into that with Aura Advantage. And I show how to take energy photos with a regular camera of orbs. Even, with undeveloped film, you don't open the lens and you can get a spirit photo of anything. So it's a really cool book, Aura Advantage. And I show those energy practices. I don't talk about it much, but that was my first book, my first foray into publication. Cool stuff.
Absolutely. Dowsing is something that's fascinated me for a very long time because it's an old technology, like Shane was saying, and that's the way I remember it. And the person in the chat remembers it is the farmers used to use it for water finding, basic water finding.
Yes.
And it's amazing that people call it crackpot, yet these guys seem to have survived okay back then. Like, clearly it did something right. Oh, they just got lucky a number of times. Really? They just got lucky every time.
That's for survival.
Right.
It was for survival originally.
Right.
And it's not crackpot.
It amazes me how they take the simple things from our ancients and that's just crazy. We don't know how they built the pyramids or nothing the ancients did. We can't explain what they did, but that's crackpot to believe. What?
Right.
We don't know, but you're wrong. Okay.
Chris, you were going to say
Chris.
Something.
Yeah. So IMEC did a show with Rory Duff, right? Now,
Yes.
I wasn't on that one, but I know he talks about like the grid lines and
Yes.
the dragon lines. I think
Yes.
he calls the other ones. And
Yes.
so basically, I just wanted to interject that I think what's starting to happen is that the artificial matrix that took us off those original dragon lines, we're now being put on them. So all these locations of these pyramids, whether it be in Egypt or Giza or in the Americas, especially Central America, Mexico, South America, I believe that they're all like the old original grids are going to start to be hooked up again. And actually the power of those pyramids and their location is going to start to be turned on again. So people should keep in mind for that, because these are all things that are like, I believe that are in the works that are happening right now. And our future selves are actually helping us to accomplish this.
Absolutely.
So we can get to this golden timeline. So
Oh my gosh.
keep that in mind. And a lot of us are going to start activating. So as the sun changes and the old grid lines, dragon lines get hooked up again, we're going to start to get our access to the Akashic records. We're going to start, these memories, flashbacks are going to start to happen. When I was at one of the complexes in Mexico, I was getting a literal vision. I was getting this really cool vision. I'll just say this real quick. I saw like, it looked like a pirate, but somebody dressed in like pirate robes and everything. They're looking through like this golden spyglass, and there was like a big pyramid behind them. And I was describing everyone what I was seeing. And then the woman there that organized it, her name was Yisa. She was saying, "Oh, I think you're seeing the 7 sages." And the Mayans were actually waiting for the 7 sages to come for some purpose. And they thought that when the Mexican conquistadors came, they were the 7 sages, which, they weren't. So all these types of things. So like these types of experiences that I was having, I think everyone's going to start having these experiences. So be on the lookout, guys. You're not going crazy. You're like activating, and it's like going to be really, really wonderful about all the stuff that starts to flood back into our memory about what the world originally was and what we are, and how we can start to restore those things from these different civilizations that had taken over the earth and installed this artificial grid system. Because the organic matrix wants to be our best friend. It wants to work with us. So the artificial stuff is being moved away, and then the original is coming back again. So I just wanted to interject that with what we're talking about.
And you mentioned Rory Duff, and he writes about the Holy Grail and just this quest and so forth. And it's kind of inside of us. It's like when you look at these major chakra centers, what I call levels of conscious agency, but it's really, these are energy centers inside of ourselves, and they do activate, and you can feel the strength of them in these crisscross points where the energy lines come together, the natural ones. And when people, 2 or more of us not 2 or 3 of us, but 2 or more of us come together, you can really strengthen.
Just 2 or 3.
No.
Such a weird change. It really is.
I know. Oh boy.
The Bible's always thrown me off. I've said it 100 times. I'll say it 100 more. It just seems so out of place with all the other Mandela effects.
Now, speaking of that, we had our big day on Sunday. Of course, that was Shane's day, and then we had John Kerwin, and it was a great day. Meigs B and so forth.
Oh man,
fantastic!
She did a great job,
yeah, and I think Dan Hennessy. But so did anyone? We've covered from the conference big things that happened Friday, Saturday, Monday. What about Sunday? I couldn't think of anything offhand that happened, but there must have been something.
The most amazing panel that I've ever seen in my entire life happened on Sunday.
Yes.
You see, to set this up, folks, we had Migsby and John Kerwin. I told you guys a little bit ago during the monthly updates about John Kerwin and myself and who he is. He's a pastor. He's a Christian pastor. So for those that may or may not know Migsby, she's a very Christian YouTuber that is into the Mandela Effect. As a matter of fact, the Mandela Effect led her to Christ. Crazy story there. Amazing story. So you've got these two very strong Christian people, which is excellent. Then, about the unicorns on Sunday. Yes. Well, yeah, that's right. But then at the panel at the end, we also had 2 people who were very manifest oriented type people. Now, these are not your Christian style people. These are the universe, manifestation, law of attraction. A lot of things that the Christians are saying, just in a different format. And what we had was 2 of each representations. And you would think that these polar opposites would make for a very sparky debate, especially in this day and age where nobody really knows how to discuss anything anymore. And everybody just loves to scream and yell at each other like they're, out of their minds, especially if they're on camera. However, that is not what we've seen, ladies and gentlemen. What we've seen was probably one of the most proud examples to date of what can happen when you have 2 groups of people who do not see eye to eye that can have a discussion about a topic that they don't see eye to eye on. That's fascinating. And yes, a discussion. Nobody was mean. Nobody was rude. Nobody was negative. Nobody was throwing jabs at each other physically or figuratively. There was none of this. It was absolutely amazing to see, and something that just really helps fulfill my faith back in humanity just a little bit, right? What do you guys think?
Yeah, Shane was there, right up there. I thought it was awesome.
Well, I'm a big fan. I was already a big fan of Migsby's work, and and I didn't know a lot about John. We got to talk to him a little bit before in the interview process, and that was awesome. I totally liked his energy and everything he had to bring forward. And I know the Christians are a huge demographic in the Mandela Effect community, so we really wanted to make sure they were represented by 2 people that are respected in the community that we also respect. And I didn't get to spend much time with John there, but on the way to the airport, it was me, Jerry, and Heather, along with John Kerr, and we had a great discussion in the car there. Even and I was really thankful for that time to hang out with John there and at the airport or whatever. I really liked him. I thought he was an awesome guy, and really we see differently about things, but for the most part, we're like, we want the best. You know what I mean? So it's like our intentions are both good. We just see things differently, and I think that's kind of the same for everybody there, and that's what's beautiful about us being able to come together and share our thoughts about things and maybe expand our consciousness. I know talking to Chris, it was definitely consciousness expanding about the whole idea of time travel and things like that. So that's what I love about it. It's not so much, being a debate, but just sharing ideas and really thinking about things in a broader context.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I learned the most, like, just from talking to people, meeting people, having conversations, so the speakers are like one angle to it. But when you go there and you talk to people and they mention something to you that ignites something else, and makes you realize something that you didn't realize in a certain way, and you do the same thing to them. Because I had some really amazing experiences with some people that were there.
Mm.
So yeah, so everyone that watched the show, you saw one part of it, but there was so much more going on, like between people that were meeting and sharing experiences and so
Lots of
forth.
synchronicities. Yeah.
Synchronicities all over the place. All over the place. Absolutely. Yeah.
Awesome. But you're muted.
Yeah, Jerry, you're muted.
That is excellent. I appreciate that. I'm talking, as Riz said, I'm just talking to a computer at this point, right? But I totally lost my train of thought. That's excellent.
Well, we could always move on to the next slide.
Yeah, we've got a
Why
great.
don't we do that?
We're talking about time. We're talking about influencing the past. We got some big news this month because scientists are showing, I think for the first time, that they can utilize a quantum simulation to change the past. So this news report is, this is such a big thing because what's happened is scientists are reporting that they successfully simulated a method of backward time travel of a sort, allowing them to change an event after the fact. They were able to do this successfully with the desired results, 1/4 or 25% of the time. This came from the Cambridge University team, and their lead author was saying that imagine that you want to send a gift to someone, and you need to send it on day one to make sure that it arrives on day 3. However, you only receive that person's wish list on day 2. Okay, I think a lot of us can relate to this. It seems like these days it's hard to coordinate anything. But to respect the recipient's timeline, you need to send it on day 1, but you won't know which gift to send until later. So your gift will sort of be on its way, and that means it's either going to be late or it's going to be wrong. Now imagine you can change what you sent on day 1 with the information from the wish list received on day 2. And this is what they're simulating with this mathematical simulation. It's exactly this phenomenon that researchers say can happen in the right scenario. And this totally ties in with what we were talking about earlier on the show with Rizwan Virk. But if you go to the next slide, because there's more, a little bit more. Next slide, thank you. Okay, whether particles can travel backwards in time is a controversial topic, even though scientists have previously simulated models of how such space-time loops might behave if they exist. Check out David Deutsch's work on this, CTCs, closed time-like curves. Okay, by connecting their new theory to quantum, I don't know how to pronounce this, metrology, which uses quantum theory to make highly sensitive measurements, the Cambridge team showed that entanglement can solve seemingly insoluble problems. The simulation has a 75% chance of failure, which a lot of us would say is pretty big. Like, don't quit your day job. But the good news is that if you know you have failed with our gift analogy, 1 of 4 times, the gift will be the desired one. And so it could be like trousers. Another time it will be trousers in the wrong size or the wrong color or a jacket. So that's kind of to wrap your mind around what they're doing with this simulation. And this is exactly the kind of stuff that Riz was talking about, his idea. Let's go to a quantum multiverse construct, working with information as the key and playing around with a sort of a quantum multiverse. And that's pretty much what I was doing in my book, Quantum Jumps too. And I think it's what we're seeing. Who knows what we're seeing with the Mandela effect, but let's open it up for conversation. This is such an interesting story on so many levels.
It works 25% of the time.
Yes.
I like the quote here. It says, we're not proposing a time machine, but rather a deep dive into the fundamentals of quantum physics, quantum mechanics.
That's all.
I'm glad you read that because, honest to God, I thought that said meteorology. Quantum meteorology.
This is a new word. Yeah, this is a new theory for sure. Quantum metrology. So making measurements with quantum theory. That's a tricky business because it seems like quantum physics doesn't want to be pinned down. It seems like when you're not looking, it wants to be a big blur of quantum waves of possibilities spread out all over the place. Like, don't look too closely because you can't see anything. And then when you turn your head and you're looking, it's kind of like when you're observing, just like in a game design or a simulation, then it comes into focus. If it needs to be there, then it is. But the key idea here is you're changing, you're messing around with time itself to get things. It's like you're running the simulations, bringing the info, going forward to throw your question forward in time, getting the answer to come back, and having an influential effect 25% of the time. So it's having that causal agency, checking the future and then throwing back an answer. So it's very interesting.
So does this basically confirm retrocausality?
Well, they're testing it out in a computer simulation format. So some, skeptics and cynics would say this is not the real world, blah, blah, blah. This is a simulation, blah, blah, blah. But the truth is, to me, it's like time travel echolocation. We've got bats and sonar, dolphins and bats. I'm just going to throw another analogy out there because you're kind of throwing a signal forward. To use the idea from John Archibald Wheeler, the physicist, he says when you ask nature a question, nature answers. And so what's going on there? What are we really doing? And also he said it from bit. So, and he's the guy that came up with the whole idea about, white holes, black holes, that kind of thing. Fascinating ideas. And then when you throw in this concept of closed time-like curves, which is the idea of David Deutsch. I know I'm bringing all these ideas together, but it's pretty darn interesting because it starts looking.
Or Bohm's work.
Yeah, David. Yeah. Let's not make it too complicated. Let's just sort of throw the idea out. If you think of yourself like you're a dolphin, you're a bat, what if you could send us a question out to the future and you get a ping back from the future to the past? And what if you can know the future by sending your questions out and listening for it just the right way? So in advance, and this may be the way our intuition works, the way we're able to get high sense perception, to be able to see the future, get future memories, like some of us get, deja vu, this kind of thing. Who knows?
I would even argue law of attraction.
Right. So,
wow. Chris, could you see this being the beginning of the time travel core and the time cop?
I think that things like this are starting to inch the public more and more towards the whole topic of time travel, because there's something called Project Pegasus. Mm-hmm. There's Tesla Vortal technology using plasma. People like Andrew Basiago talk about the time travel that the military's been doing since at least the 70s. So all these things are kind of inching us towards believing that these types of things are actually happening, and how things like plasma could be involved in St. Elmo's fire. And, can particles actually travel backwards in time? Can they travel forwards in time? So, and then is that how this reality can work? So, yeah, and there's people out there that still don't believe that time travel is possible. They feel that it's just like a myth, looking at the world in a very physical way. But all these types of things are starting to at least inch people forward that, it is possible. Mm-hmm. And even if you don't think it's possible, do you think it's possible that in the future that this could be discovered, how to do time travel? And if time travel is discovered in the future, why couldn't someone bring it to the past and use it there as well? So, yeah, there's a lot to digest with this, but to me, it just shows how the global narrative is starting to give us bits and pieces about the whole time travel concept.
I would agree with that, actually, because this looks like it could definitely lead to that if it continues down this road of research.
Right, exactly. And are we just discovering this now, or have civilizations of the past already known about this? There's so much to show that there's so much we don't know. So, yeah, so it just keeps going on and on. Could the ancient past know about this as well as the ancient future? So, yeah, I believe that time travel has always been there. It's how beings that have an understanding of being outside of time can affect the timelines here and do certain things. So it's all these things are coming together to help us show that this is all, part of the way the reality can work.
Shane, you and I have had conversations where basically we're universe walkers, right? We walk through synchronicity every day, all day. That's basically how we guide our lives. Universe guides us down these paths. And I've noticed, and maybe you have had the same experience, where you'll think, man, I would really like to such and such, or it'd be really nice to, and no emotion, no want, no need, just, yeah, that'd be cool. And within a very short time, generally, that tends to manifest itself for whatever reason, no matter how big or small, whether it be something somebody says or something you wanted to eat that somebody walks up and hands you exactly what you were thinking of, right? Do you think this could be related to the same research?
Very much so. It could be. I mean, and if you think about like the work of Dr. Dean Radin, where he was flashing images and people were responding 5 or 6 seconds ahead of time, it'd be this sort of thing happening too. Like we desired it because on a deeper level, we knew we were about to get it. You know, so I mean, at the end of the day, how do we know what comes first, the cart before the horse, or what? Right. So it's like if time is an illusion to begin with, then time travel wouldn't be what we think of it as. It would be, I don't know. It's just the problem I had with time travel was just in the way that Hollywood presents it, right? Because if it's an illusion anyway, none of that would work, hopping in a car and traveling somewhere else. I think if I could do that, I would see that the thinker statue has changed in my childhood. You know, I don't think we'd go back and then the thinker would look like it did when I was there. You see what I'm saying? So we're going to go back from this now point, not back when I was actually there the first time around, and I remembered the thinker being that way. So once you kind of realize like things aren't just like the idea of timelines and time itself is just sort of a construct for us to be able to think about, you know, put it in a context that we can kind of think about it. Then you can see how sure we can, you know, retrocausality isn't really traveling backwards in time as we would think about it. So it really is just affecting the consciousness that we're observing here and now, even if it's something that seems like, I don't know, that's kind of deep. But
no, I actually like that answer a lot. It makes a lot of sense, right?
It could.
I think that's a great answer, Shane. I notice we're getting a little close on time here. I want to inject before we move on to our next thing. I believe this is somebody that was at the conference, possibly somebody that was on stage with Alicia. Possible. They're asking, did anyone from the conference see a white pickup towing a blue car with a donkey with a mohawk riding in the back after they left?
I didn't.
I can't say I did. No, I missed it. If it was around me, I totally did not see that myself. So just putting that out there for the audience in case somebody has, let us know down in the
leave a comment. Yeah, that's a good idea.
Absolutely. Unicorns was also a thing on that Sunday too. Really, really cool.
Right.
So last but not least, ladies and gentlemen, we have our mailbag. That's right. You guys talk to us all month long. Emails, comments on YouTube videos, comments everywhere. You guys are so excellent interacting with us. We really appreciate you guys. All the interactions you give us, all the responses. We love hearing from you guys because that's what we're about is the community. You guys are what make us who we are and what we are, right? We do what you want. That's all we're here for. We are a service to you, right? Any mail to talk about, Cynthia?
Yeah, let's bring up the next slide. Here we go. This is really cool because it's a question relating to the talk that Christopher Anatra and Sean Bond gave. And this is one little slide. So there's this image came from that talk. And the question says, excellent job, gentlemen. And I'm trying to read what it says. I'm a Native American. And maybe you could read this, Jerry. I'm trying to see.
Says, I'm a Native American, at Quantum Businessman and at Sean Bond.
Oh,
Did you notice the native's bun/hair, one is holding the smartphone, fascinatingly enough, is a $ shape, Chris?
Yeah, that's really interesting. So just to give some people some background that haven't watched this at all, this is a close-up of a mural that was painted in 1937 by the painter. His name was Umberto Romano, It's located in, I believe, Springfield, Massachusetts. And so when people have looked closely at this, they've seen the Indian, holding up what looks like a smartphone. Now, this is in 1937, way before, I don't even think Steve Jobs was born by then. I don't know. The global narrative says it's either an axe handle or it's a mirror that he's looking at. But usually mirrors are round. It just doesn't, it kind of looks like a smartphone to me, So, could this be an example of something related to time and time travel? And, then you look at the Indian's hair and it does look exactly like a dollar sign. And one of the things we were talking about was broken treaties. And I believe this painting was based upon an event that happened in the 1630s related to the Pequot Indians. And if we don't have a picture of it, but the big blow up picture of it shows Indians on one side and the white man on the other, and look like they're trying to negotiate something. And so could that dollar sign be a symbol of treaties or a broken treaty or something like that? So I believe that definitely does have meaning. And that was a great catch by Jay in Oklahoma, I think, JNOK. So yeah, it all, I'm sure, has meaning to that. So thank you for bringing that to our attention, for sure.
And is that a dollar sign with like two lines? It's the way I remember the dollar sign.
That's a good point too.
It's a
right?
single line.
With the two, now it's just the one, right?
Yeah.
But I would like to point out, and it has been pointed out in our chat here, if you look real close, that very well could be the end of a sword handle from the guy behind him.
Oh. You mean the dollar sign?
Yes,
Right.
the dollar
Yeah,
sign
that's
itself.
actually-
So his hair ends right there at the edge of that.
Okay, right.
You know what? That's another good point, because what I'm looking at the main picture of it, and there is like looks like a white man, and if you look all the way through, there is looks like a sword that goes all the way through.
Okay.
So yeah, it could be like the handle of a sword, but still, it does still look like a dollar when you blow it up. Looks like
and it's kind of funny because it's got the single pole and the double S on this one. You know what I mean? It's like
Right.
backwards.
Oh, weird.
Yeah.
But if you see it in sort of a flattened view, then the single pole, because of the way the highlight is, looks like a double pole. So it's like the perspective on it's really cool. It reminds me of that image you show in your slides where you got the 6 or the 9, and the perspective, Cynthia, in one slide.
Yeah.
Kind of how you look at it.
Like how you look at it, right?
Yeah.
Interesting symbology here. Swords are they can cut like truth or information, but it can be, and it's interesting.
Or words too.
Words too. Thoughts can cut, and the dollar sign link to that is very interesting. And it seems like it's right behind, but it's right near the gentleman's head who's holding what looks like a smartphone to me. That doesn't look like a mirror.
Last place that one, a stabbing device too, right by your back.
No.
But
Yeah.
he's holding what if it's a mirror? It looks like a black mirror, doesn't it? That's
It does.
all of the interesting things you can.
So many interesting details here.
What is a black mirror today called?
A smartphone.
Yeah.
Handheld
that's
device.
That's it.
Wow.
Oh, my goodness.
Maybe he is holding up a black mirror after all.
Wow.
Is my battery
it is
dead?
fascinating.
Can't get this to light up.
As much as I
puzzled.
don't generally believe in time travel, the fact that, okay, let me restate that it's capable to be done right now. Not that it won't be available, that it's capable, that I can go jump in a time machine right now and jump back to last Tuesday. Like that's not generally a thing. But if you look in history, there are a whole, aside from the OOP arts even, there are a whole lot of artifacts that keep showing up that would suggest that people from what would be considered pretty close to the time we're in right now, give or take a decade or so, could have traveled back then and for whatever reason had to initiate certain things. A loop could have been created in such. And one thing I'm referencing, Cynthia, I know you're aware of this, I'm sure pretty well the whole team is, the nuclear cave, the nuclear reactor, natural nuclear reactor. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Now, where is this one? Location?
I want to say it's in Spain, if I'm not mistaken. and I may be mistaken. But there's a cave that has this natural process that goes on with the uranium in the cave, and it just happens to have the right water level where it come up and it'll initiate a nuclear reaction, all that. Then the water level will drop down before it goes overboard, and it'll, like it's been exactly set to these parameters. I've never heard of nature making nuclear reactors like that. Generally,
I never heard of this.
I've not heard of this. Is new to me too. I didn't know about that.
Wow, I thought that you guys would have at least heard of this. Yes.
We need to stick a slide in for the next show.
Right. So we're going to cover this on the next show, folks. I'll just go ahead and stop right here with that concept.
That's a good one.
But there are numerous things in the past that we keep seeing in art, in things like that, oop arts, out of place artifacts that would suggest that there was some type of travel or some type of loop that is going on. From when it starts and ends, I don't know. But, it's something I've concepted for a while. I've it's something I like to think about. Like you guys know, this is what I think about for fun. So and questions. It is time for questions, ladies and gentlemen. Unfortunately, Riz isn't here, so we don't have questions for him. But if you have any questions, go ahead and throw them in the chat now. While we are waiting on you guys to throw the questions in, ladies and gentlemen, season 3 of the International Mandela Effect Conference is coming to an end. Can you guys believe we've been doing this for 3 seasons now? It's amazing. It don't feel like it's been a year. We've done it for 3 years already, just the open tables.
And 2 live events.
We've been 4 years altogether. This is mind-boggling, guys.
Yeah.
Wednesday, November 29th, and Wednesday, December 20th, respectively, will be the last 2 shows of season 3 of IMEC Open Tables. It's not the last open table. It's just the end of season 3. Mind-blowing, ladies and gentlemen. Make sure you set your calendars for these dates. Be here or be square, right? I'm going to do my best to be.
I guess these are all live events, actually. I mean, what I meant was 2 in-person events.
That's fair, right?
Yeah. We're here virtually. We're yeah.
I can't believe we've made it this far, guys. It's amazing. You guys are just, you're amazing. You're a big part of my life. None of this could be done without all of you guys, all of us together. And none of it could especially be done without our incredible Patreons, right? Our Patreons are really what has helped really support us, financially speaking, putting on these conferences, doing these different things, because unfortunately, folks, these things cost money. As much as I hate that it costs money, it does cost money to do these things. So we are a non-for-profit. I don't make a penny off of it. Cynthia doesn't see a penny from it. Shane doesn't see a penny from it. Neither does Chris. All the money goes back into the community for conferences and events just for you guys, right? Yep. And once again, this is all capable mainly right now because of our incredible Patreons, right? And our gold level Patreons, these guys have been with us for over a year. And I got a special announcement toward the end of this slide here. But our gold level Patreons over a year, Jason Ram, Jody, Colleen Learley, Stephanie Clay, James, J.D. Peterson, Josiah Boricius, Paul Ellis, Bo Kim. I would like to give a very special shout out to Bo Kim, our top donator all year long. They have donated the most amount to IMEC. It really does mean a lot to us. So special shout out to Bo Kim. You're absolutely amazing. We appreciate you and all the rest of you Patreons there. Allison Eastman, Gail Brown. That ends out the gold level. Silver level, been with us for over 6 months. Teresa Richards, Belinda Anders, and Laurie Glasner. And last but not least, ladies and gentlemen, the newcomers. And we have doubled this list since the conference, guys. Easily, if not tripled this list since that conference that we just had in September. Bronze level, Andy Schwang, A. Thompson, Cosmic comic, dancer, and sage. See, that was tricky. Try saying that 5 times fast. So after the conference, ladies and gentlemen, we continued to pick up Elaine Osborne, brand new Patreon. We appreciate you, Miss Elaine. I got to spend a little bit of time with Miss Elaine. Amazing person to talk to. Laura Bortman, a brand new subscriber. We're glad to have you all on board, as well as JoJo's Williams, a person that I personally know, a really special person in my life. Amy Lacey, Vit Hartman, Lisa Henderson,
Yay.
Laura Monson, Kathleen Wright, William, and Silvis Bondurant. Ladies and gentlemen, from Elaine all the way down are our brand new Patreon subscribers. You guys are absolutely amazing. Thank you so much for joining our Patreon. As you guys know, there are special perks to the Patreon. It's not just giving us money and that's it. You get something in return. You get to see something that nobody else on the internet gets to see. No, it is not Jerry dunking into a dunk tank full of Jello, unfortunately. Or maybe fortunately for you, I'm not sure. But seriously, our green room, behind the scene green room conversations that we have before every show get posted in the Patreon only area. And this month was really awesome because, ladies and gentlemen, not only did we have a very special guest join us for this episode, but for the first time, second time ever, I think, we had a special guest join us in the green room before the episode. I believe Donald Hoffman, thank you, joined us in the green room also.
He did.
If I'm not mistaken. So definitely go check that out. It's the only place you're going to find. Okay, I got distracted by the chat. That's really awesome. I'm going to read that here in a second. The only place you're going to find those green room sessions. So, folks, definitely, we appreciate any level you go with. You're still going to receive them. It isn't tiered like that. The tiering is just how much you want to donate. We appreciate any tier from the very bottom to the very top. All of you guys really help make IMEC what IMEC is. And it's because you guys were able to do what we do. Now, our clapping just now, we were clapping, we were celebrating something, and holy cow, synchronicity, says Rose, you guys clapping, and I'm watching people clapping on Twitter at the exact same time.
Love it.
Imagine her surprise when it went from silent clapping to us, right?
Very funny.
Right, folks. But again, Patreon members, if you're not a Patreon member already, you're only going to find those special behind the scene ones in Patreon. So we really appreciate it. Also, you guys, anything you donate to the International Mandela Effect Conference is a tax write-off, right? It is a tax deduction. It is we are a 501c3 official organization. So you donate to us, you keep that receipt, you get to write it off at the end of the year on your taxes too. Everybody's a winner. That's right. Any super chats, guys, any super stickers, anything you send to us is considered a donation. So there you go. Do we have any questions I'm looking for here? That's right. Submit your questions in the chat, ladies and gentlemen. Like I said a moment ago, if we have any. High Vibe Tribe says, you are all amazing putting these together. Thanks for everything you do, IMEC. We do it because of you, our friends.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
And thank you guys for being here. Like, that is amazing. It would mean nothing if we're just talking to a dead screen here, right? So you guys are really what makes this and what we do it for. Rose says, thank you guys for all your hard work that I'm just discovering. Look forward to seeing more from you. Well, Rose, we're glad to have you here just discovering us. I'm glad you stuck around the whole time. That means a lot to us.
Yes.
Definitely go ahead and check out our Patreon. John Benny. This is one of your friends, isn't it, Shane? Mr. Benny?
Yes, sir. What's up, John?
Is the Mandela Effect like string theory? Ooh, now. This could be a show unto itself. Shane, I'm going to start with you, sir.
It could be. I don't don't have an opinion on that.
Well, string theory is getting into the theory of everything. And so, John, I hope you get a chance to watch our show with Tom Campbell. That was day one of this last conference, because we've got Tom Campbell talking about what he calls my big toe, which is his big theory of everything. So a theory of everything, again, is trying to bring together quantum physics with classical and bring it all together from the very, very tiny to the very, very big. And that was string theory's big attempt, was to do that. It brings in other dimensions. So it's like all these curved dimensions are constructing the physical reality that we're part of, the 3 dimensions of space, the 4th dimension of time. So we're all travelers through time and space. And maybe we are seeing things that are like interdimensional pop-ins that show up here and there. That's a good theory. So if that's what you mean, could be. And that could be a whole show in itself.
Based on string theory. String
Yeah.
theory is the basic concept that every particle, everything in the universe is made up of little vibrating strings that vibrate at the right frequency to. So if something were to, an outside force, an outside influence were to change the vibration of any one of those strings, that would compound upwards, correct? Correct?
Well,
Theoretically?
String theory is a theory, and I'm not the best person to talk about it, but yeah, it is a theory, and it shows that the extra dimensions, like it says basically, in order for the tiny world of quantum physics to come together with the very large world of classical physics, you need maybe 10 dimensions. Let's just say 10, but it might be 11. You need at least 10. So if you've got 10 or 11 dimensions, where are the others? We've only got 3 dimensions of space, 1 dimension of time. That's only 4. Where are the others? Where are they hiding? And string theory says they're curled in. You don't see them, but they're there. That's string theory. So it says those high dimensions are there. They're doing something. It's kind of like junk DNA. What's it doing? It reminds me of that. Or dark energy, dark matter. What is it doing? There's all this stuff. Like, what is going on? And we don't know.
I've said it a number of times, and I'll say it again. I really want to reach out to Dr. Kaku, Dr. Michio Kaku, who is one of the founders of string theory, and get him on the show to discuss that, because I think that would definitely be an incredible episode to talk about. Very, very science-based, very incredible episode, I think. And he's an open-minded guy to stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, we're lucky to have Rizwan Virk talking about the Mandela Effect. He writes about it openly, warmly.
Absolutely.
And so people like that, they're gems. So Rizwan Virk's a true gem. And anybody else, is the scientist willing to seriously take this topic on, of course, we'd love to have them on the show.
Yeah, and I really liked Riz's concept where he talked about digital physics. So living basically within consciousness, within information, and how that could help explain like a theory of everything. So yeah, digital physics, I think, is something that might be something that's discussed more and more in the future. We shall see.
And speaking of the future, folks, we've got future shows coming up, but unfortunately, this is the end of this one. It has been so amazing. Guys, I can't tell you how much I miss you during the month. Everybody in the chat, and especially you three, I miss you guys so dearly through the month. I look forward to these moments we can get together and do this. Like, this is just as fun for us, guys, as it is for you. Like, probably a little more fun for us, honestly. But on that note, ladies and gentlemen, I'm Jerry Hicks, also known as the Dark Wolf. Beside me is the amazing Cynthia Sue Larson. Beneath me is the incredible Christopher Anatra, the quantum businessman. And beside him is the absolutely fascinating Shane Robinson, unbiased and on the fence. On behalf of these folks, together we are the International Mandela Effect Conference. And remember, together we go.
Together we grow.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Love you so much. Bye.
Bye.